involve nudity. Well, it is a Botticelli, it is Venus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to involve nudity.
And there are lots of wonderful paintings that involve nudity. You can't suddenly say now, in 25, you can't look at these.
You'd have to shut down every art gallery in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it would be ridiculous.
We are living in 1984 now, aren't we? I mean, not literally the year, but the whole censorship thing. It's like groupthink, you must do this, you must do that. You can't have independent thought. Yeah. You can't look at works of art in case you start thinking the wrong way.
It's just like newsflash, classical paintings will probably have nudity in them.
Yes. You're right.
Angling, and
compared to what you can see on Instagram.
Well, yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hey, very, very good afternoon to you. Plugging myself in. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News on this happy Friday. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, two shocking reports out today show that, thanks to soaring immigration, Britain is more divided than ever before. By 2035, 25% of the British population will be foreign-born and 1/3 of it will be first and second generation immigrants. And a second report also shows today that with 1 million immigrants unable to speak English, as high as 43% in some towns. Today I'm asking, is immigration destroying Britain, and what, if anything, can be done about it? And yesterday, the Justice Minister was forced into a hasty retreat after she was slammed for introducing two-tier justice that favoured ethnic minorities and women. But today, fresh evidence has emerged that the new guidelines were inspired by Labour's David Lammy. And tough new measures to control foreign donations to British politics have been slammed as the reform rule. Critics say that Labour Party is running scared of billionaires like Elon Musk funding Nigel Farage, while they soak up millions of pounds from union barons who demand taxpayer-funded pay rises in return. Song that already haunts me, Eurovision 2025. Will we win it? Will it be once again nil point? Because girl band Remember Monday have been confirmed as the act who will represent Britain this year, performing their song. What the hell just happened? Great question. Well, we'll hear from the former contestants for their thoughts throughout the show, and that's all coming in an action-packed hour. Well, the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. 1/3 of the entire population will be either born abroad or the children of those born abroad in just 10 years' time. Exclusive data seen by GB News today will reveal the nations flooding the country. What can or should be done? Is it too late? Is Britain forever changed? Is that even a problem? I'll be joined on the show later by Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe has absolutely given this topic both barrels. You'll not want to miss what he's got to say. But what do you think could or should be done to control immigration into the country? Get in touch usual ways, and that's gbnews.com/your say. But now your headlines with Mark White.
Good afternoon. At 3:03, the main headlines from the GB News Centre. Some breaking news first, and Donald Trump says he's considering new sanctions and tariffs on Russia following a massive wave of overnight strikes on Ukraine. President Trump said, based on the fact Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. Well, it comes as EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has rallied European leaders calling for nation-states to back Donald Trump in ending the war.
We all want a peace through strength, a just and lasting peace, but a peace from a position of strength. And this is also in the interest of President Trump, to have a peace through strength. And if he wants to achieve this, it is only possible with the support of the European Union and its member states.
6 climate activists jailed for their roles in various direct action protests have had their sentences reduced at the Court of Appeal. A total of 16 activists, including the founder of Just Stop Oil, Roger Hallam, were sentenced last year for their roles in 4 protests in 2022. They included climbing on gantries over the M25 and throwing soup over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers painting. Lady Chief Justice Baroness Carr ruled that 6 of the 16 should have their sentences reduced, while dismissing the other appeals.
We have decided as follows. The sentences imposed in the M25 conspiracy case were quashed, and the following sentences substituted. Roger Hallam, 4 years imprisonment.
The Prime Minister has warned that violence against women and girls is a national emergency. It comes after the case of triple killer Kyle Clifford found that he'd been viewing harmful online content before the murders. He was convicted of raping his ex-girlfriend Louise Hunt before using a crossbow to kill her and her sister Hannah, and a butcher's knife to kill their mother Carol. Prosecutors said Clifford watched videos posted by social media influencer Andrew Tate the day before the deadly attack. The court was told the murders were fuelled by the violent misogyny promoted online. Shadow Justice Minister Dr Kieran Mullen spoke to GB News earlier.
Well, I think we have to always, in these circumstances, be clear about the individual responsibility of people like that. There are, millions of us in this country who have access to that same content, and it doesn't lead to us committing these sorts of horrific acts. So people are responsible for their own actions. Having said that, of course, we know that some of these things can have an impact, which is why in government, as the Conservatives, we passed the landmark, really, Online Safety Act, which was designed to force social media companies to take the proper steps that they should be doing to minimise access to this sort of content, particularly for children.
Almost 1,700 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally in the past week. For the 7th straight day, Border Force responded to more migrant crossings on Friday. More than 50 migrants have arrived so far, and that follows 230 who made the crossing in 4 small boats yesterday. More than 3,700 Channel migrants have made the journey from France since the 1st of January, the biggest number of arrivals at this point in any year since the crisis began in 2016. Eurostar has confirmed services between London and Paris will remain suspended for the rest of today after the discovery of an unexploded World War II bomb in the French capital. Thousands of passengers have been disrupted today. Eurostar said affected passengers can exchange their tickets to travel on another day. And finally, the King has collaborated with Apple Music to share his personal playlist to mark Commonwealth Day.
Throughout my life, music has meant a great deal to me. It has that remarkable ability to bring happy memories, comfort us in times of sadness, and to take us to distant places. But perhaps...
Well, the show called The King's Music Room features King Charles opening up about his love of music and his top tracks. The radio broadcast was recorded in his office at Buckingham Palace. Well, I've already said that, some breaking news now. Members of the Russian proxy spy ring, dubbed the Minions, are facing years behind bars for one of the largest and most complex enemy operations to be uncovered on UK soil. Bulgarians Katrin Ivanov, 33, and Vanya Gabarov, 30, and Timur Ivanov and Ivanovich, 39, were found guilty at the Old Bailey of spying on an industrial scale, putting lives and national security at risk. Well, hopefully next hour I'll have more time to have read those names. That's it from us. We'll be back in half an hour. Now it's over to Martin Daubney.
Mark White, you didn't miss a beat. Now, two shocking reports out today show that thanks to soaring immigration, Britain is more divided than ever before. And by 2035, the trend is going to explode. The first set of data, seen exclusively by GBNews, shows that by 2035, 25% of the entire British population will be foreign-born. But that rises to 1/3 if you include their children. A third of the entire population will be born overseas or with their direct offspring. And a second damning report also out today, the analysis of census data shows that almost 1 million now speak little or no English in the United Kingdom, and in some parts of Leicester, it's an astonishing 43% of people don't speak any or little English at all. Now, with this in mind, today we're asking the sobering question: is mass immigration changing Britain to the point where integration is now nigh on impossible? And what, if anything, can be done about it? Well, to get our teeth into this one, I'm speaking now with GBNews political editor Chris Hope and the former Conservative MP and Immigration Minister Tom Purscliffe. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Tom, I'm going to start with you first, your field of expertise. These figures are simply incredible. A third of the entire nation in just 10 years' time born overseas or the direct children of them. And I think we've got some figures we can put on the screen now to show the country of origin. This is from the Centre for Migration Control. We can see there on the screen at the top, we have 3.2 million Indians. We have next 1.5 million Nigerians, 1.26 million Chinese. We have 1.15 million Pakistanis, 607,000 Polish, 500,000 Bangladeshis, and then we have 400,000 Americans, 400,000 South Africans, and 360,000 Germans. And by the way, the latter of those three are typically high-earning, high-tax-paying, beneficial types of immigrants. Therefore, this is not about, immigration being a good thing or a bad thing per se. It's about numbers, it's about the volume, and it's about Britain being forever changed. What do you make of such astonishing data?
Well, I think you've really hit the nail on the head. These are unsustainable numbers. This just can't continue to be the case. And frankly, the big concern that I have is, A, around the sort of infrastructure pressures, the enormous challenges that this presents to our public services, but also that crucial need for people who come to the United Kingdom to be able to integrate. And I think that the trajectory that these figures are on is not one that the British people as a whole support. I think that it really frays public consent for immigration wholesale. That really worries me enormously, because we are a society that's benefited immensely from immigration over the years, but it has to be controlled, it has to be managed. I, in government, started pulling the levers that we have on the back of Brexit. There were some good reasons why we had elevated numbers for a period of time once we'd left the EU, for example, responding generously to Ukraine, to Hong Kong, the situation in Afghanistan, but also the need for social care workers on the back of the pandemic. What we saw with the changes that James Cleverly and I introduced was numbers coming down very dramatically month on month.
From a massive high.
I absolutely accept that. And the minute I was appointed to that role as Legal Migration Minister, I got on and did something about it.
But they're already here, Tom Purscliffe. I mean, you brought in measures with James Cleverly to stop it after the horse has bolted. Those numbers Martin's dug out are huge. They are changing societies, changing communities. You say it's unsustainable. You did it.
I did something about it.
Only after the event. They're all here.
And actually, one thing that I thought was really noteworthy was Rishi in his interview this week making the point that he wished that he'd pulled these levers earlier, and I wish that we'd pulled these levers
earlier. Well, you told voters you would do in all those 5 elections. You didn't do a thing about it.
Well, one thing, again, on that front is that as members of the European Union, Martin, you and I were in the same place in terms of campaigning to leave the EU, and one of the reasons for that was because I wanted to determine our own destiny when it came to immigration. We could do nothing about EU free movement. We can do something about this.
Well, the phrase was take back control, which patently didn't happen. And this isn't taking back control. It's a situation that's utterly and perhaps irredeemably out of control. It's getting worse. And the problem we have is one of integration. The second set of data is astonishing. 43% of parts of Leicester speak little or no English. Pendle, 37%. Oldham, 36%. And Burnley and Bradford, 33%. The same in Blackburn. Northern towns, once British manufacturing towns, now being absolutely dominated by Pakistanis, by Bangladeshis, by Asian community, high Muslim population, 26th percentile in lots of these areas. And what we have there is the perfect areas for not multiculturalism, but monoculturalism. Cultures living side by side, not able to speak English or not wanting to speak English. High levels of unemployment benefit, particularly amongst Pakistani women, whose duty in their society is to raise children. This is a situation that cannot carry on. And yet it has to be said, Chris Hope mentioned there, the Conservatives held the door wide open to all these problems.
But we have got the levers because of our time in government. And actually, the referendum allowed us to do that.
Well, the only levers that were pulled was the trapdoor that sent the Tories through the floor. You got hammered because you failed to grasp the nettle on any of this.
I don't doubt that for a moment. And, you know, I felt that in my old constituency. I felt that in many of the conversations that I was having, and it's why I wanted to do something about it. But I always said that you would likely need to go much further. And so things like looking again at the graduate route, looking at very robust caps on legal migration annually, that's what we're able to do now, because you can look at what skills you need in the economy year to year and do that. Things like a comprehensive labour market strategy. I was a minister in the DWP for a while. I would love us to do more to look at what we can do to join up jobs and skills and the needs of our businesses, because what you shouldn't be doing is relying on foreign labour in the first instance. That's not all right. The political challenge in all of this, and I experienced this, and ministers will no doubt experience this again, is the discipline that is required across government to do this. It's easy for ministers to pay lip service to we want to bring numbers down, but when it comes to their pet sector or the sort of niche area in their portfolio, and maintaining that discipline is hard.
Who's in control of it? So the Treasury say more migrants might boost our GDP, but not per capita, but overall GDP. But then it's hard to keep people off benefits. Then we'll see more benefits, surely. But I mean, it's a concern. I think with the efforts by Cohn-Bendit not to say you must work by here to be here twice as long to qualify for citizenship is an attempt at clearing up this mess.
I agree. I mean, I think actually Kemi's right on this. This is one of the things I wanted to look at. The election got in the way. We couldn't move that forward. I would be much more stringent on English language requirements. I just don't think that it's conducive not being able to speak the language. It's not right. In workplaces, that presents safety issues, integration in communities, but also to earn the right to be able to stay in the United Kingdom long term, you should be a fully functioning member of the community.
I think a lot of people watching the show will agree. Tom Purcell, thank you for coming in. Thank you for your candour. It's much appreciated. Now, Chris Hope, we're going to move on to our next political hit now, and the latest developments in the peace negotiations in the war in Ukraine. As a short while ago, that man, President Donald Trump, has said on social media, based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreed on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it is too late. Well, I'm still joined by Chris Hope and Tom Purcell. Let's turn to you first, Chris. This is certainly confusing for Liberals out there. We were hearing last week Donald Trump's going to hand everything on a plate to Vladimir Putin, roll over and tickle his baddie in the Kremlin. Well, and here we go, sanction time.
A week ago, I just arrived back in the UK after being with the Prime Minister in the Oval Office on a Thursday night when it was all rather friendly and the invitation was given to Donald Trump. The following day, not a week ago, we saw that a massive row in the Oval Office, an emergency summit in Lancaster House the following Sunday, and then talks overnight yesterday with there's 20 countries to form a coalition that are willing to enforce the peace. This is Trump and how he works. He's not a man of language. He works on the deal. He uses language to force people into a position. He used it on tariffs with Mexico and Canada and basically shut the border to illegal arrivals. He's now done it here. He's used a hostile language, which is very uncomfortable and appalling, really, against Zelensky last Friday. But it forced the EU and European countries to a place where they're spending more money already on defence or planning to, and a force is building up, and now he's moving the fire onto Russia.
And Tom Purcell, it seems resolutely fair to try and hoover up a bit of money from the Russians. I mean, we did that ourselves, and we used the interest on that to help towards the Ukraine fund. Keir Starmer did that last week. So it seems that Donald Trump isn't just tickling Putin's belly in the Kremlin. He's going to have some money in this, presumably, but from your notion, is a positive move.
I think we all find it all a little bit unorthodox, don't we? And so it's a bit surprising, the approach that's taken. But when you look at the progress that has arguably been made over a very short space of time, it has started to deliver some results. And I don't like all of the language that's used. I find some of it a little bit intemperate. I didn't like at all what happened last Friday. I thought it was really disconcerting. And I think all of us in the UK who've been so supportive of the Ukrainians found that really difficult to watch. But it has moved the debate on. And
I don't know. I quite enjoyed the spectacle. I mean, the reason I say that is because, you know, we live in times where we've had 3 years of nothing happening, and within a week we're having people sit down at the table.
So Trump is a businessman who pretends to be a politician. He's all about the deal. He'll say anything to get a deal. He'll say Zelensky is a dictator one day, he's not the next. But I'm interested in knowing where this goes. It's all about British troops on the ground in Ukraine. Where do you see it? I spoke to Nick Timothy for Chopper's Political Podcast. I think we have the clip now. He is worried about not enough chats being done about putting our troops in harm's way. This is what he had to say.
And I'm quite anxious about some of these commitments maybe made in haste about putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. I mean, to be clear, that is a country outside NATO, and peacekeeping sounds fluffy, but it's not like blue berets and they're handing out sweets to kids. It means if Russia attacks, that we fight Russia.
We fight back.
If Russia attacks, we fight back. That is what's happening. Peacekeeping isn't about giving out sweets to local people in Ukraine. It's reacting to an assault. Do you think we are politically ready for that choice?
I don't think there's been sufficient pitch rolling with the public to really explain what peacekeeping means and what that's all about and what the risks that are inherent in that are. I think your point around, Martin, earlier about sanctions and trying to use some of this money is that, yes, we should use the interest. I also think we should be looking very carefully at what we can do to get into the wider funds that have been seized, because actually the more that we can do to fund the Ukrainians to carry forward this effort, the better it is and to guarantee their own security. But I do think the government's got a big job of work to do to look at what the public expectations around this are, because putting people in harm's way is the most difficult vote you ever cast as a member of Parliament.
That was my next point. You said everyone's supportive of Ukraine. I wonder if that's true in the sense of, if it came down to a kind of Iraq-style, let's send the boys out to the front line, I don't think the public would support that really at all. We don't know the terms of engagement, but a lot of people are saying that this would be an act of provocation. The Kremlin said foreign boots on the ground in Ukraine would be seen as a hostile act. And so the notion that this could just proceed and the Kremlin would accept it, I think a lot of people think is a risk. And should we really be risking British lives?
I also think that's why, actually, to go back to the sort of initial point, President Trump really turning his attention now to the Russians is so important in all of this, showing a real seriousness in the sort of diplomacy and the negotiations with them, because there has to be something very much at stake for the Russians in all of this. And so the up in the ante to really make sure that if there is a peace, it's durable, is so critical.
Tom Burton, we have that over there. Now we've got some breaking news just in, and this is an astonishing development. The Independent Office for Police Conduct has reopened its investigation into previous assaults by the Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane, following representations from the victims' families. Now, this is a huge development because the families, of course, Emma Webber, the mother of Barnaby Webber, has been onto my show a couple of times, and they were resolute in their determination to make the police admit failing 6 or 7 times Calacane could have been intercepted because of his previous assaults, previous violent conduct, previous attempts to stop him were missed. And they sincerely believe, they told me on this show, that they believe their children would be alive today if this man had been stopped earlier on. So this is a huge development. The Independent Office for Police Conduct has reopened its investigation into previous assaults by Nottingham triple killer Valdo Calacane. We'll have more on that throughout the show as we hear it. Now, coming up, there's been a bomb scare on the Eurostar. This meant that all trains between London and Paris are cancelled after an unexploded bomb from World War II was found in Paris, with travellers told to stay at home. We'll have all the very latest in this developing, well, hopefully not developing too much story. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I watched the video yesterday with Meghan Markle announcing this relaunch. What did you make of the video?
It's constantly this rebranding thing that's going on, which is quite interesting. We've had different kind of, way back to Sussex Royal at the very beginning. Here we've now got this new lifestyle series that's coming out. Obviously, she's got this new brand that's going to go alongside it. It's very difficult because royals, as we've said many, many times before, this is not something royals typically kind of do. And obviously these are no longer, if you like, working members of the royal family, but still, Prince Harry, as I keep saying, is a senior member of the royal family. So it's quite a kind of uncharted territory that they're going into. And as I said, this is a bit of a disaster because everything they seem to kind of do when it comes to branding, it just doesn't seem to work.
They seem to really be struggling to find their purpose in the US. Do you think that's fair? I mean, Prince Harry, of course, has got the Invictus Games, which is just the most wonderful thing that he has set up. But it appears that they're not obviously part of the royal family anymore in terms of working royals. They're not senior working royals, but not able to make it in the business world yet either.
You're right, Elliot. I think the Invictus Games is definitely the kind of saving grace. That's the thing that everybody kind of admires and respects them for. But then it's when they keep going back into this kind of celebrity branded lifestyle. I don't think anyone's really that hugely interested. As you said, in the States, you kind of hear people are for them, people are against them. I think most people would rather that they weren't kind of doing this. I think we've said this so many times before that, as members of the royal family, they should continue down that line and going into this kind of business world. It just, I think I'm right in saying historically with royals and kind of business, it doesn't really work.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back, 3:27. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, brace yourselves. It's the final day to see how you could win one or two amazing prize bundles and our latest Great British Giveaway. Now, each prize bundle has a brand new iPhone 16, 500 quid in shopping vouchers and a whopping 10 grand in tax-free moolah. These are the details that you need to enter.
It's the final day to see how you could become one of two big winners. As we have two prize bundles that have to be won. There's two lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, as lines close at 6 p.m. today. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, breaking story here. Members of a Russian proxy spy ring, dubbed the Minions, are facing years behind bars for one of the largest and most complex enemy operations to be uncovered on UK soil. Bulgarians Katerina Ivanova, 33, Vanya Gabarova, 30, and Timur Ivanov Ivanchev, 39, were found guilty at the Old Bailey of spying on an industrial scale, putting lives and national security at risk. Now, Commander Dominic Murphy, the head of the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command, details the threat that they posed.
From everything we've discovered, the threat was quite broad, in fact. So, yes, they were gathering information. It's what you might call lifestyle surveillance against individuals here in the UK. My concern has always been, though, what was that lifestyle surveillance going to lead to? And we have seen a long history of the Russian state conducting operations here in the United Kingdom, including lethal threat operations like the investigation in Salisbury. So deeply worrying about the physical and information challenges created.
Now, thousands of Eurostar passengers are stranded in Paris and London today after an unexploded World War II bomb was discovered on a train track at Gare du Nord in the French capital, leading to all services being cancelled. A Eurostar spokesman has said services will only be permitted to resume once mine clearance operations by the French police are completed. Well, we can speak now with the travel journalist Christian Wolmar. Christian, welcome to the show. Astonishing. It's been there all these years, this bomb discovered today, and now the service comes grinding to a halt.
Well, it's not infrequent. There are still a lot of bombs out there that remain to be discovered. And indeed, the TGV was once disrupted by a similar bomb quite recently. So the problem is that once you discover them, you don't know what way up they are. You have to get to the fuse. You obviously have to be very careful. I mean, frankly, the likelihood of them blowing up is remote, but nevertheless enough to stop all the services going into Paris. And it couldn't be at a worse point, actually. I mean, it's in the throat of the Paris Gare du Nord. It's the busiest station in France, and has caused chaos not just to Eurostar but to a lot of the other lines.
And so, Christian, to my next question,
I'm in Oxford here, so I'm very sorry about the noise.
No problem, mate. My next question, Christian, is so what next? I mean, do we have a dramatic defusing situation? Does the knowledge exist to deal with devices of this age? Will there be a controlled explosion? What happens typically in these situations?
No, there's very unlikely to be a controlled explosion. That the fuse itself might be exploded. So if they get the fuse out, they sometimes then will detonate that, but that's just a small flash. It's nothing like the whole bomb itself. And it's a very disruptive process. I mean, we get this in the East End sometimes with these bombs that are been there for a very long time. And you have to get the military to do it, the specialist weapons people to defuse it and stuff. Very skilled job. And according to Eurostar, they're hoping that services will be resumed as normal tomorrow. But, you know, it depends on this being dug out.
Yeah, bedlam for people trying to get to and from Paris, but mercifully, nobody injured. Thank you very much, Christian Wolmar, for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much. Now, lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including I'll be speaking with former UK Eurovision contestant Andy Abraham to see what he thinks of this year's Eurovision entry, which has been branded by some as torture to the ears. They're already predicting nil point in some parts of the country. But first, here's your headlines with that man, Mark White.
Good afternoon. The main headlines from the GB News Centre. Members of a Russian-run spy ring are facing lengthy jail terms for one of the largest and most complex enemy operations to be uncovered on UK soil. Bulgarians Katerina Ivanov, Vanya Gabarov and Timur Ivanchev were found guilty at the Old Bailey of spying on an industrial scale, putting lives and national security at risk. Well, Commander Dominic Murphy, the head of the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command, details the threat they posed.
From everything we've discovered, the threat was quite broad, in fact. So, yes, they were gathering information. It's what you might call lifestyle surveillance against individuals here in the UK. My concern has always been, though, what was that lifestyle surveillance going to lead to? And we have seen a long history of the Russian state conducting operations here in the United Kingdom, including lethal threat operations like the investigation in Salisbury. So deeply worrying about the physical and information challenges created.
Well, more breaking developments, and Donald Trump says he's considering new sanctions and tariffs on Russia following a massive wave of overnight strikes on Ukraine. President Trump said, based on the fact Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. It comes as EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has rallied European leaders calling for nation-states to back Donald Trump in ending the war.
We all want a peace through strength, a just and lasting peace, but a peace from a position of strength. And this is also in the interest of President Trump, to have a peace through strength. And if he wants to achieve this, it is only possible with the support of the European Union and its member states.
In the last half an hour, the Independent Office for Police Conduct has reopened its investigation into previous assaults by Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane, following representations from the victims' families. The alleged assaults took place just a month before Calacane killed Ian Coates, Barnaby Webber and Grace Somali Kumar. Almost 1,700 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally in the past week. For the 7th straight day, Border Force responded to more migrant crossings on Friday. More than 50 migrants have already arrived so far today, following 230 who made the crossing in 4 small boats yesterday. More than 3,700 Channel migrants have made the journey from France since the 1st of January, the biggest number of arrivals at this point in any single year since the crisis began in 2016. And those are the latest GB News headlines for the moment. We're back with more in half an hour.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In South Yorkshire, the M1 northbound has 2 lanes shut for emergency repairs. They're taking place between Meadowhall at junction 34 and Rotherham at junction 35. In the West Midlands, the M6 is queuing northbound after a collision between junction 8 for the M5 and junction 9 for Wednesbury, with queues before junction 7 for Great Barr. In Essex, delays continue on the M11 northbound. That's partly blocked after a collision between Harlow North junction 7A and junction 8 for Bishop Stortford. And in Surrey, the M23 southbound is partly blocked by a broken down lorry just after junction 9, the turn-off for Gatwick Airport.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:39 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now we're offering one lucky viewer the chance to come to GB News here in London, where they will receive a tour of the studio and our newsroom. And that's not all, because the lucky winner will also have the opportunity to meet Patrick Christys as he prepares for his nightly show, Patrick Christy Tonight, of course, which is 9 till 11 p.m. And here he is to tell you how to enter.
Everyone, Patrick Christys here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter. Just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out. Enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
Get stuck in now. The next act to represent the United Kingdom at Eurovision has been chosen. Let's have a little listen. Well, there we go. The trio, Remember Monday, will be hoping to follow in the footsteps of Sandy Shaw, Lulu, the Brotherhood of Man, wow, remember them, Bucks Fizz and Katrina and the Waves as they represent Britain in Switzerland this May. Now, let's get to speak with the former UK Eurovision contestant in 2008 and, of course, the legendary X Factor runner-up, Andy Abraham. Andy, an absolute delight to have you on the show. Mate, your story on the X Factor, absolutely loved it, mate. Former bin man, bus driver, shot to stardom, inspirational story, and of course your journey took you to Eurovision itself. Tell us about your memories of what turned out to be, how should you put it, a bit of an off night for the United Kingdom.
Well, my experience was, I mean, it was amazing doing it. It's an iconic competition. Had a fantastic time. I got to double figures, mind you, 14 points. So I was very happy by the end. I wasn't sure what I was doing because I think I was drunk at the time. So I had a brilliant time. Yeah, there I am. Look at that shirt. But yeah, I mean, I actually was listening to the song. In fact, I've had a good chance to listen to it, and the girls I think the vocals are great. I think the harmonies are wonderful, and it's really catchy. You know, this whole thing about bleeding to the ears, I don't get that. It's a very catchy pop tune, you know what I mean? And I think it's very representative of now. You know, lyrically, the way it's put together. I think, yeah, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's very skillfully made, there's no doubt. They're a great-looking bunch of girls. They've been childhood friends, apparently, so it's got a great backstory. But here's the thing. Is the entire thing a fix? I mean, every time the United Kingdom enters, there's allegations, since Brexit and whatever, they tend to vote against us. And some of the acts that come out are so random anyway, Andy. I mean, you never know what you're going to get from some of these countries. Do you think, actually, the headwind is against Britain because, well, they seem to gang up on us?
A little bit. I mean, that was one of the reasons why Terry Wogan, he decided to quit, you know, because my year, it was so bad. The political voting was so bad. And we had no friends at that time, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, maybe now that with all of these, all of the summits that are happening at this moment with the European members, maybe they might decide to give us some decent scores, you know? Who knows? But good luck to the girls, man. You know, it's a big opportunity. They remind me a bit of, I don't know if you remember, Wilson Phillips.
Yeah.
There's a group called Wilson Phillips, and they're a country act as well. So, you know, good luck to them. I hope they do great, and it's onwards and upwards for them, you know?
And there's no wonder when you look back that Terry Wogan used to get stuck into a bottle or two of Baileys because...
Well, yeah, I think I was drinking his Baileys that night.
But Andy, you're a great sport, and what are you up to now, mate? How can people check you out, and what are you up to, man?
Well, I'm literally probably in about 6 months. I've got a new single coming out, so yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. It's more soul music. I love my soul. I enjoy going out and performing. So I'm still doing that 20 years on from the show. So that made me. So you know what I mean? It's all good.
And Andy, you know, your story was so inspiring. And you know, what would your advice? Would you say to people get involved in Eurovision, or for you, was it just a Euro hell?
Do you know? No, it wasn't a Euro hell for me. I mean, my name is etched. Listen, I'm on GB News. You know what I mean? And it's because of Eurovision. So you know, the British public, as crazy as they were, they decided to put me through to 2008, and you know, I had a great time. You know, me and my wife had a great time. The BBC delegates, we had a great time with, sadly, Caroline Flack, who's not here anymore. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we had a great time.
Andy Abraham, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for cheering us up, and the best of British to you. Like I say, I find your story so inspiring at the time. A regular guy that made it big. Thank you very much for joining us, Andy Abraham there, and passing on his best wishes to this year's Eurovision entrance in the UK. Do you know what? I think it's right. I think people are being harsh on this trio already. Let's see how we get on, but I still think it's all going to be rigged against us. They don't like us after Brexit. Now then, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're wondering if there's any scope for winter sun in the Mediterranean at the moment, well, Greece is your best bet. Mostly fine here, but absolutely horrendous weather across Iberia, Madeira, into the Canary Islands. Of course, we had the flash flooding a day or two ago in Gran Canaria. We've also got the risk of river flooding and flash flooding across Spain, Portugal, into the Balearics. Meanwhile, most of Italy fine away from the far south, and Greece largely fine for the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's going to be lots of spring sunshine around for the weekend, and feeling warm in that sunshine too, though a little bit wet at times across parts of Scotland. That's all thanks to low pressure towards Scandinavia, dragging in a frontal system through into the overnight period, so some thicker areas of cloud here and also some outbreaks of rain. Those will continue to push their way northwards through the overnight period, so quite wet at times across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and leading to a very wet start across northern parts of Scotland in particular by the time we reach Saturday morning. For many areas staying largely dry and some clearer spells, but we find ourselves in between two frontal systems, so temperatures aren't going to dip away, and it's actually going to be quite a mild night for many, particularly across towns and cities, many remaining in the mid to high single figures. So a wet start, yes, across parts of Scotland, but any outbreaks of rain are still going to slowly shift their way northwards and will eventually clear and peter out through the course of the morning. Quite cloudy and murky at times across Northern Ireland, could even see some patchy fog at times across Northern England, and pretty much elsewhere across England and Wales too, a chance of some patchy fog. Thicker cloud just moving into parts of Cornwall, perhaps later on into Devon, a risk of showers here. But through the course of the day, any rain or showers largely easing away. They just might leave a remnants of cloud at times, but for many for the beginning of the weekend, there's going to be lots of dry weather, lots of blue skies around, and temperatures still feeling very warm for the time of year, so definitely feeling pleasant in that sunshine, particularly across northern parts of England, where we could potentially reach around 18 or 19 degrees Celsius, and with light winds that should feel very pleasant for the time of year. Then through into the evening, we'll see a mix of cloud and some clearer spells. So under the clearest skies, it will turn a little bit chilly, but for most, once again, it should remain largely mild. And into next week, there will be some dry weather, still some showers at times, but temperatures soon dipping away, so turning much colder overnight and also by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:49 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News on this glorious Friday afternoon. Now, King Charles has collaborated with Apple Music to share his personal playlist ahead of Commonwealth Day, which of course is on Monday. And let's take a little listen.
Throughout my life, music has meant a great deal to me. It has that remarkable ability to bring happy memories.
Beautiful. Now, the show, called The King's Music Room, features His Majesty opening up about his love of music and his favourite tracks. And the broadcast was recorded in his office at Buckingham Palace. We can now speak with GB News' royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, welcome to the show. You know, I was just going past Buckingham Palace and Westminster earlier on. The Commonwealth Day flags are all out. It looks absolutely magnificent out there. It truly, truly does. And ahead of that, there's a festive treat of the King's playlist. Tell us more.
Yes, Commonwealth Day, very traditional, but of course the King has put a brand new twist on it, and he is taking to the airwaves on Monday morning at 6 o'clock for his brand new royal radio show, is what I'm going to call it. It's being streamed on Apple Music One, and he's collaborated with Apple, showcasing his personal music taste from around the Commonwealth, a number of different tracks, a number of different artists, including Bob Marley, Kylie Minogue, Grace Jones, and then some more modern artists called Davido and Ray as well. Ray he met at Apple's headquarters back in December at Battersea Power Station, so perhaps the musical tastes were starting to bubble then, and then King Charles went away and decided to create this radio show. I would describe it as King Charles's answer to the Radio 4 programme Desert Island Discs, where he kind of introduces each track and maybe, let's say, reminisces about some of them, and presumably he's going to say exactly why he has chosen those particular tracks. But of course, this is very interesting that he has chosen Apple Music to collaborate with. He's not the first member of the royal family to do so. Princes Harry and William have both done so in the past. But what Apple is a global streaming platform. It's got 93 million subscribers worldwide. Of course, the Commonwealth, which he is head of, is a family of nations consisting of, you know, over 1 billion people. So I'm getting a sense that the royal family is kind of getting rid of tradition here, not really collaborating with British broadcasters, and are going to these big American streaming giants. We know King Charles also has a big documentary coming out with Amazon Prime, for example, later this year or very early next year. So that appears to be the trend. But yes, 6 o'clock Monday morning, you can watch it live for free on Apple Music, and then it's being streamed, I think, across the week as well to mark Commonwealth Day.
You know, what's so fascinating about this, I mean, everybody loves nosing through somebody else's CD collection, right? When you go around their house, and show my age here, CDs, but everyone likes to know what other people listen to, but to get an insight into what the King listens to is fascinating. And of course, Cameron, it reflects his hugely experienced global travel. Bob Marley, of course, when he's been to the Commonwealth before, been to Jamaica, he has a picture of him in the past with a Bob Marley hat on. You know, he really, really loves Bob Marley, loves reggae, and there's a real sense sense here of, on his travels, he's picked up the music of the places he's visited.
Yeah, he certainly has, Martin. He visited Bob Marley's old house in 2008. Of course, it's now a museum, as you say. He also danced to Kylie Minogue's track as well during a reception in 2012 at St James's Palace. So perhaps he'll be talking about that. We're not entirely sure, of course, what exactly he says. But it's nice that he's done the old classics, but also some of the modern ones as well, with Ray and the rest of and Davido and the rest of them as well. So perhaps he's trying to cater to the entire Commonwealth, young people as well as old people. Of course, there's some 1930s tracks in there too, so it's really spanning a number of decades, his music taste.
Cameron Walker, thank you very much. A fascinating peek into what the Prince Charles before and King Charles now has been listened to throughout the years. Thank you very much for joining us on GB News. Cameron, always an absolute delight. And like I say, the Commonwealth flags out there, they simply look wonderful. All the colours resplendent of all the Commonwealth nations. Ahead of Monday, we're expecting a day of festivities then. Now, stick with us. Two astonishing reports out show that some towns in Britain have 43% of the population don't speak little or any English, and we've got incredible figures that show 1/3 of Britain's entire population will either be born from abroad or their children in just 10 years' time. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. But now, here's your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's going to be lots of spring sunshine around for the weekend and feeling warm in that sunshine too, though a little bit wet at times across parts of Scotland. That's all thanks to low pressure towards Scandinavia, dragging in a frontal system through into the overnight period, so some thicker areas of cloud here and also some outbreaks of rain. Those will continue to push their way northwards through the overnight period, so quite wet at times across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and leading to a very wet start across northern parts of Scotland in particular by the time we reach Saturday morning. For many areas staying largely dry and some clearer spells, but we find ourselves in between two frontal systems, so temperatures aren't going to dip away, and it's actually going to be quite a mild night for many, particularly across towns and cities, many remaining in the mid to high single figures. So a wet start, yes, across parts of Scotland, but any outbreaks of rain are still going to slowly shift their way northwards and will eventually clear and peter out through the course of the morning. Quite cloudy and murky at times across Northern Ireland. Could even see some patchy fog at times across Northern England, and pretty much elsewhere across England and Wales too, a chance of some patchy fog. Thicker cloud just moving into parts of Cornwall, perhaps later on into Devon, a risk of showers here. But through the course of the day, any rain or showers largely easing away. They just might leave a remnants of cloud at times, but for many, for the beginning of the weekend, there's going to be lots of dry weather, lots of blue skies around, and temperatures still feeling very warm for the time of year, so definitely feeling pleasant in that sunshine, particularly across northern parts of England, where we could potentially reach around 18 or 19 degrees Celsius, and with light winds, that should feel very pleasant for the time of year. Then through into the evening, we'll see a mix of cloud and some clearer spells. So under the clearest skies, it will turn a little bit chilly, but for most, once again, it should remain largely mild. And into next week, there will be some dry weather, still some showers at times, but temperatures soon dipping away, so turning much colder overnight and also by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In South Yorkshire, the M1 northbound is partly blocked for repairs between junction 34 at Meadowhall and 35 for Rotherham. In West Yorkshire, the M621 is partly blocked westbound by a breakdown between the M1 and junction 7 at Sturton. In the West Midlands, the M6 is queuing northbound after a collision between junction 9 for Wednesbury and junction 10 for Wolverhampton. In Warwickshire, the M6 northbound is partly blocked for repairs at junction 4 for the M42. And in Essex, delays on the M11 northbound, that's partly blocked for repairs after a collision between Harlow at junction 7A and Bishop Stortford at junction 8.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could be one of 2 big winners in our latest giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you on this glorious Friday afternoon. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, 2 shocking reports published today show that, thanks to soaring immigration, Britain is more divided than ever before. By 2035, 25% of the British population will be foreign-born, and 1/3 will be foreign-born plus their children, 1/3 in just 10 years' time. A second report shows that 1 million immigrants are unable to speak English, as high as 43% in some towns. We'll have experts' reaction to this throughout the show. And a Bulgarian spy gang is facing years behind bars for helping Russian espionage on British soil in what has been described as one of the largest and most complex Russian spy operations to ever be uncovered. We'll have all the very latest on this incredible, significant developing story. And meanwhile, Donald Trump has said he is strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs against Russia until a ceasefire deal is reached, marking a significant development since last week's chaos in the White House, where he fell out spectacularly with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Will it be Eurovision 2025 glory, or will it be nil point for Britain? Because girl band Remember Monday have been confirmed as the acts who will represent Britain this year, performing their song, What the Hell Just Happened. We'll hear from former contestants throughout the show for their thoughts, some of whom are saying it feels like their ears are bleeding. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. Well, in just 10 years' time, according to an astonishing report seen exclusively by GB News today, there will be 25% of the entire British population will be born abroad. And that's rising to 1/3 of the entire nation if you include those born abroad, plus their first generation offspring, their children. 1/3 of the entire nation of foreign origin. Does this concern you? Is it an issue? Is the issue now simply so out of hand that integration is an impossibility on this scale? A second report out also today shows that 1 million people are speaking little or no English across Britain, and in some parts of Leicester, it's as high as 40 3%. Entire towns across the north with more than 40%, 30%, 35% of the entire population speaking a smidgen of English. It's an incredible conversation and one I feel that we need to have. Get involved the usual way, gbnews.com/you'll say. That's your news headlines on this Friday afternoon with that man, Mark White.
Good afternoon. At 3 minutes past 4, the main headlines from the GB News Centre. Members of a Russian-run spy ring are facing lengthy jail terms for one of the largest and most complex enemy operations to be uncovered on UK soil. Bulgarians Katrin Ivanov, Vanya Gabarov and Theomor Ivanchev were found guilty at the Old Bailey of spying on an industrial scale, putting lives and national security at risk. Well, Commander Dominic Murphy, the head of the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command, details the threat they posed.
From everything we've discovered, the threat was quite broad, in fact. So, yes, they were gathering information. It's what you might call lifestyle surveillance against individuals here in the UK. My concern has always been, though, what was that lifestyle surveillance going to lead to? And we have seen a long history of the Russian state conducting operations here in the United Kingdom, including lethal threat operations like the investigation in Salisbury. So deeply worrying about the physical and information challenges created.
Donald Trump says he's considering new sanctions and tariffs on Russia following a massive wave of overnight strikes on Ukraine. President Trump said, based on the fact Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. It comes as EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has rallied European leaders calling for nation-states to back Donald Trump in ending the war.
We all want a peace through strength, a just and lasting peace, but a peace from a position of strength. And this is also in the interest of President Trump, to have a peace through strength. And if he wants to achieve this, it is only possible with the support of the European Union and its member states.
In the last hour, the Independent Office for Police Conduct has reopened its investigation into previous assaults by Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane following representations from the victims' families. The alleged assaults took place just a month before Calacane killed Ian Coates, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar. 6 climate activists jailed for their roles in various direct action protests have had their sentences reduced at the Court of Appeal. A total of 16 activists, including the founder of Just Stop Oil, Roger Hallam, were sentenced last year for their roles in 4 protests in 2022. They included climbing on gantries over the M25 and throwing soup over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers painting. Lady Chief Justice Baroness Carr ruled that 6 of the 16 should have their sentences reduced while dismissing the other appeals.
We have decided as follows. The sentences imposed in the M25 conspiracy case were quashed and the following sentences substituted. Roger Hallam, 4 years imprisonment.
Almost 1,700 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally in the past week. For the 7th straight day, Border Force responded to more migrant crossings. More than 50 migrants have arrived so far today, following 230 who made the crossing in 4 small boats yesterday. More than 3,700 Channel migrants have made the journey from France since the 1st of January, the biggest number of arrivals at this point in any year since the crisis began in 2016. Well, Eurostar has just confirmed that suspended services between London and Paris will resume again on Saturday. They were suspended after the discovery of an unexploded World War II bomb in the French capital. That device has now been defused. Thousands of passengers have been disrupted throughout today, Eurostar said. Those passengers can exchange their tickets to travel on another day. And finally, the King has collaborated with Apple Music to share his personal playlist to mark Commonwealth Day.
Throughout my life, music has meant a great deal to me. It has that remarkable ability to bring happy memories, comfort us in times of sadness, and to take us to distant places.
Well, the show called The King's Music Room features King Charles opening up about his love of music and his top tracks. The radio broadcast was recorded in the office at Buckingham Palace. I said earlier that Go Now by the Moody Blues was my personal favourite. Time for Martin Daubney to fess up now. It's got to be Chaz and Dave, hasn't it? Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit.
Oh, Mark, whatever's in your tea, put some in mine. Beautiful stuff. No, I like, what was that one called Once Upon? Every year? Donny Logan. Yeah, that's my favourite. Eurovision Song Contest. Let's get back to some serious politics. Chris Hope's completely bamboozled here. Let's get the latest developments to peace negotiations in the war in Ukraine, because a short while ago, President Trump has said on social media, based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. So Russia and Ukraine get to the table right now before it is too late. Let's get some reaction from you, Chris Hope. But before that, we're just expecting, actually, Donald Trump is set to address the world, address the nation from the White House, imminently from the Oval Office. Now, we understood earlier on today that announcement may be about cryptocurrency. Donald Trump, of course, spoke a lot about crypto ahead of the election and building a stockpile of cryptocurrency owned by the government. But, Chris Hope, the conversation now could pivot, and no doubt will when journalists get questions at him anyway, a quite astonishing development, because a week ago today, Zelensky left the White House with his tail between his legs in astonishing sight, and everyone's been saying ever since, well, Donald Trump is tickling the belly of Vladimir Putin. He's going to give everything Putin wants on a plate, and now, actually, he's going to blast Russia with some sanctions.
Because there has been shelling overnight on key infrastructure in Ukraine. I'm less surprised by this. I mean, I was in the Oval Office last Thursday, saw him up close. I don't think, my impression, and I've been covering politics for 30 years, I don't think Trump is a politician. He's a businessman wearing politicians' clothing. So he says things like, one day Zelensky is a dictator. Oh, I never said that. He doesn't really care about words. But politicians is all about words and promises and broken promises. He doesn't care about words. He cares about the deal. If you look at the border with Canada and Mexico, that is now 93% down on illegal crossings because he promised tariffs against those countries. They then secure the border. It's done. And I think this was happening here. He's gone after Zelensky to force Zelensky and the EU and European Union and the UK and Canada to cough up more for defence. That's now in train. There's 20 countries might join the coalition. They're willing. There's talk starting in Saudi Arabia on Monday with Zelensky. You've got Pete Hegseth, the US Defence Secretary, meeting with our guy, John Healey. They are good talks. That's look yourself after. He now turns his gaze on Russia and puts the heat on them.
And actually, he might have looked at what Sir Keir Starmer and the British government have done, and that is precisely this. They've seized assets of oligarchs from banks based in Britain, accounts based in Britain, billions of pounds. And in fact, the interest on that alone, the interest, not the actual dodge itself, Chris, was used to put that 1.6 billion into Ukraine. So Donald Trump could think, there's a whopping great pile of cash here that I could get my mitts on too.
$1 billion from UK frozen Russian assets is now in the hands of Ukraine. As of this morning, we are told, out of Kyiv. What is happening here is, I think legally you can't go after the capital. That's more difficult. But the interest, the money you earn on the savings or the shares or the buildings, the rent on those buildings, you can go after, and that's what they've targeted so far. But I think the capital could be in range too.
And just to admit there, we are presently waiting for Donald Trump to appear at the White House. No doubt be another extraordinary exchange. Let's bring this back to the United Kingdom. One of the huge conversations has been, are we really ready or prepared? Or actually, does the public does the public back the notion of putting British boots on the ground in Ukraine? I think the public aren't in favour of this, and you had a fascinating interview on Chobber's podcast speaking to Nick Timothy. Tell us more.
Nick Timothy, he's a former advisor to Theresa May in Number 10 and the Home Office. Yep. He's concerned, I think, we're not having a conversation about the risk we are putting our troops into, the line of fire, if we do start backing if we do put our own British boots on the ground in Ukraine without the protection of America. I hope the clip's there. Let's hear what Nick Timothy had to say on Chopper's political podcast.
I'm quite anxious about some of these commitments maybe made in haste about putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. I mean, to be clear, that is a country outside NATO, and peacekeeping sounds fluffy, but it's not like blue berets and handing out sweets to kids. It means if Russia attacks, that we fight Russia. We fight back.
It means we fight Russia. If our troops are fired on, if that happens, we are at war with Russia. Are we ready for that? £12.8 billion in 3 years given to Ukraine in grants and loans. What are we getting back for that? That's not discussed. I asked that of the aides to the PM last week. They say, well, it's the right thing to do. But I think surely people watching GB News, listening in, might be wondering why America gets a chunk of rare earths for their tech industry, whereas our payback now. Keir Starmer, in terms said the weekend, problems on the continent of Europe wash up on our shores. We are being a good neighbour. But is that argument made enough to British voters? I'm not sure it is.
I honestly think if you ask the British public, would you agree with deploying British boots on the ground in Ukraine? I honestly think the vast majority would say no. I don't agree with that. This is a war far away. I know we've said that before historically, but the Kremlin has already said this would be seen as an act of provocation. Why should we place British troops in the firing line
What the Kremlin say, we are negotiating with America about the shape of a peacekeeping force and the kind of Ukraine side of a peace deal. We haven't even gone towards what Putin might do, and he is saying no NATO in Ukraine. We wouldn't allow an EU force. How is this force being badged? These conversations are not being talked about.
Good. Now let's talk about something that's been called the reform rule. This is the clamp down on foreigners donating money to British political causes. Of course, this has come off the back of that rumoured $100 million to Farage, Nigel Farage from Elon Musk, which didn't happen, but nevertheless it made them sit up on their haunches in that place over there and think, hang on a minute, we might want to try and stop this, and that's what's happening.
The reports denied, of course, last November that Musk might give $100 million. I would rather call this the Daubney law, because you're the one who got all the talk going about it on your show with me. But no question, they are looking at this thinking, can they factor this into other legislation about giving the vote to 16-year-olds? What they're looking at doing is, if you're a company, then the man that was watching on screen now, Elon Musk talking in the White House, of course, he was flirting, if I can say that rightly, with Reform UK, with supporting them maybe financially. I think he's got the details of how to give, for example, under UK law, if he wants to give money to Reform UK. They're looking maybe, according to the Times newspaper, at limiting how much profit and revenue a company makes. Donations are linked to what your profits are in the UK. With 2 years of post-tax profits limits the donation. That could stop $100 million donation, but it wouldn't stop many millions of pounds. That might be enough for Reform UK.
Yeah, and in a nutshell, this will be seen by Nigel Farage and Reform UK as, once again, the establishment closing the door, bending the rules to lock them out.
We're seeing elsewhere in Parliament right now, they're looking at ways to try and stop people like Farage do extra other jobs, maybe like at GBNews, trying to squeeze their influence. They are worried about Reform UK. The establishment is wrapping its clammy hands around this party. I'm sure it'll do it best to resist it.
A perishing thought there, Chris Hope. Thank you very, very much for bringing us up to speed. Just to remind you, we are still waiting for Donald Trump to appear at the White House, set to address the nation and, of course, the world on cryptocurrency, and no doubt he will also be asked on this developing situation in Ukraine. Now, America could slap sanctions on Russia. We're still waiting on that. And in the meantime, A huge story just broken this afternoon because members of a Russian spy ring dubbed the Minions will spend years behind bars after being convicted of one of the largest and most complex acts of espionage ever to happen on UK soil. Well, 3 Bulgarians were found guilty at the Old Bailey for spying on an industrial scale, putting lives and national security at risk. It's an incredible story. And to discuss it, I'm joined by Commander Dominic Murphy, the head of the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command, details the threat that they posed.
Everything we've discovered, the threat was quite broad, in fact. So, yes, they were gathering information. It's what you might call lifestyle surveillance against individuals here in the UK. My concern has always been, though, what was that lifestyle surveillance going to lead to? And we have seen a long history of the Russian state conducting operations here in the United Kingdom, including lethal threat operations like the investigation in Salisbury. So deeply worrying about the physical and information challenges created.
Well, let's talk about this more now because I'm joined by the defence analyst and the former British Army officer, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Stuart. It's an astonishing story when you look at the details. It was Bulgarian nationals. They plotted kidnaps, disinformation campaigns, surveillance against Ukrainian troops, secret weapon trades with China, all from Great Yarmouth.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin. It is extraordinary, actually, and it's a bit like the plot of a James Bond movie, to be honest. And no doubt people are already looking at this story with a view to putting it on the small screen at some point in the future. I think that if anyone had any doubt that Russia was the enemy, then here is not yet more proof to the contrary, that it is very much a danger to the UK and UK interests, on top of all the other things which have happened recently, of which probably the most infamous was the Skripal poisoning attacks in Salisbury. So we may not be in direct conflict with Russia, but in the grey zone of hybrid warfare, we're most definitely at war with Russia. And I think everybody has to be aware of that.
And this is a threat that's on British soil. Again, like you say, it sounds like something out of a spy novel. The pushback is happening at a time, of course, when people are rightly concerned about the Kremlin, what's developing. Could I get your thoughts, if I could, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford, on the development a short while ago of Donald Trump now threatening sanctions against Russia, going for money, seizing money, pushing back there? Do you think that's an indication of the fact that actually Donald Trump isn't just rolling over to the Kremlin?
Well, I think it is. I mean, the thing with Trump is you're never really quite sure what he's going to do next, or whether he says what he means or he means what he says. But he gives every impression of lashing out in every direction to try impose some sort of order on things which he sees need to be fixed. And whilst only a week ago we were decrying his actions on Zelensky in the White House, which I found most distasteful personally, and people were saying that he had joined the Russians, he'd taken the Russian side. Now we have contrary evidence to that, and he's not taking the Russian side, certainly not with this most recent set of announcements. So we don't really know where we are, and that's why I keep saying that Europe increasingly has to look to itself, look to its own for its future security.
Could I ask you on a point we've been talking about here this week, and that is the notion of British troops being posted on the ground in Ukraine. Do you think, I mean, the Kremlin has said that would be seen as an act of provocation, and I wonder if the British public will be against the notion of putting British lives in danger over there. Do you think it's a good thing to do? Is it a wise thing to do, or would it be seen as an act of provocation?
Well, it's certainly by Putin, it will be seen as an act of or it will be presented as an act of provocation. But it depends the circumstances in which it happens. I don't see British troops going into Ukraine, if indeed they do, in some sort of peacekeeping capacity, as going on their own. In fact, we can't do it. We don't have sufficient numbers of troops to do that without withdrawing our services from elsewhere. And at the moment, I don't think the British public will be very much in favour of it, because after the adventures, shall I put it that way, of Afghanistan and Iraq, I don't think we want to see a repeat of that. But it's a distinct possibility that British troops could go to Ukraine after a ceasefire as part of a peacekeeping force in conjunction with troops from other nations.
OK, thank you very much for joining us today on the show. That's Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much. Now, coming up, yesterday, the Justice Minister was forced into a hasty retreat after she was slammed for introducing so-called two-tier justice that favoured ethnic minorities and women at the expense of heterosexual white men. But today, fresh evidence has emerged that the new guidelines were inspired by, that man there, Labour's David Lammy. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Last week, Christie's Auction House in New York announced that it was holding an auction devoted solely to art created with artificial intelligence. Nearly 6,000 people have signed an open letter calling on Christie's to cancel the sale over concerns that the technology behind such AI art pieces exploits human artists and can potentially violate their copyright. And there are broader ethical questions at play too. Where do the boundaries of art lie? With me now is James Thomas from Martin Stanmore Auctions. James, very good to see you indeed. I don't quite see how you can have art without a human being. I mean, art to me is something which is produced by a human being which expresses something about the human condition. To me, that cannot be produced by a machine. How do you react to that?
I agree completely with what you're saying there. I think for us at Martin Stanmore, we're very much about sort of getting behind artists in a traditional method.
I sometimes say to my team, I've got a piece to camera to do now. Find out what AI would say that I would say. And, of course, what it comes up with. It doesn't have enough knowledge about what I've just experienced, so it's not a perfect example. But it certainly gets the tone. And, therefore, I mean, I'm completely replaceable. I mean, the next series that I do... Say that. Well, thank you so much. The next series I do of Railway Judges, you could perfectly well have an avatar and AI producing words that sound like mine.
It is very scary. It is very scary. And I think for collectors and investors, it's a bit scary for them too. I mean, a lot of our collectors at Martin Stanmore that we speak to, they very much prefer things that come from traditional artists, not just sort of blue chip works, but also up and coming artists.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, just a reminder, we are presently waiting for Donald J. Trump to appear in the Oval Office at the White House, expected to address the nation, rumoured to talk about cryptocurrency, and also an astonishing announcement in this past hour that he's now slamming sanctions against Russia. No doubt that will turn up when journalists go to question him later in that conference. We'll bring you that the moment it happens. But before that, it has now emerged that the sentencing guidelines at the centre of a so-called two-tier justice row were based on a report written by, the now Foreign Secretary David Lammy, that man on your screens there now. Now, the new guidance issued by the Sentencing Council, set to come into force on April the 1st, April Fool's Day, it tells judges to consider factors like ethnicity and religion in a so-called pre-sentencing background report which decides convicted criminals' fates. Now, the future Foreign Secretary found widespread racial discrimination in the criminal justice system in the Lammy report, and he put forward changes to improve outcomes for black Asian and ethnic minority offenders. Well, we can now speak with the former Conservative campaign manager, Jack Barwell. And, of course, I'm still joined by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Jack, I'll turn to you first. Isn't it astonishing how yesterday Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, was forced to say, no, I don't actually agree with two-tier justice. In fact, as an ethnic minority woman myself, I reject it. And yet today, we found out the Sentencing Council are actually basing their recommendations on the Lammy report. And, by the way, Shabana Mahmood, we covered it on this show in September of last year, she herself stated it's one of her primary roles to close all women's prisons. So clearly they do believe in two-tier justice, despite their protestations to the contrary yesterday.
Well, absolutely, Martin. Great to be with you and Chris. Look, I wish I could sit here today and honestly tell you I was surprised that the Labour Party say one thing and then they do another. But that's all the Labour Party have done since they came into government. Remember the winter fuel payments, remember the WASPy women. We've had so many examples. Business raised income taxes, the farmers down in Devon where I live and work. All of these communities have been let down by Labour lying to people time and time again. So we shouldn't really be surprised. Shabana Mahmood only came out with all these posts on social media after Robert Jenrick did a great job of exposing the truth of what was going on here. She sent someone to that sentencing review in November last year and they said absolutely nothing about it. They were happy to sit silent until the public called them out on it. And as you say, it now turns out it was actually done based on the review that David Lammy put in. We know David Lammy loves to write things that he doesn't want to say publicly. We saw that with the news about China this week, where he'd been lobbying for the new embassy with Beijing. So really, the only April Fool's joke is our Foreign Secretary.
Come off it, Jack. You know, and you, Martin, you should know better than this. You know, absolutely, these plans started under the last Conservative government. They were brought forward. What the problem here is you have arm's length bodies deciding policy which arguably MPs should vote on. And I think Shabana Mahmood, alerted to it by Robert Jenrick, doing great work in opposition, has acted on that. She's written to the Sentencing Council. She wants an urgent meeting. They want them to reverse this. If they don't, they might legislate.
But the question is this. This comes into law on April the 1st. Yeah. Some might say that date is fitting. But why is it taken until now for the Justice Secretary to notice this and write this
letter? Because neither party saw it as a problem. That's the point.
But it is a problem.
Neither Tories nor Labour until it was raised by...
Chris, if I can just come back on what you're saying. I mean, I rate you there for trying your best to get some objectivity here. But look, let's be honest. Lammy and the review started this process off. Could the Conservatives have done more? Absolutely. But who is the only person of any party, and I include Reform in this, that has done anything about actually exposing this? It's Jenrick and the team that are working with him as the Shadow Justice Secretary. He was the one that led the call on this. Mahmood had no idea about it in the chamber.
Why didn't he start that call when they were in power, then? Why has he waited to snipe it?
Well, in defence of Jenrick, he wasn't the Justice Secretary at the time. But Jenrick is a good man because he has actually admitted the mistakes that the Conservatives made in government. They weren't perfect, but at least they're the party now that are standing up and actually saying he's not just calling this out. He found the information himself.
But the Tories set the ball rolling.
He found the information himself, Martin. Then he said he's going to challenge it legally, and now Badenoch is working with him on trying to change the bill as it's going through Parliament. Ignore the past. Let's now talk about the future that the Conservatives are building.
But Jack, there's a wider issue of out-of-touch judges, I think. We're seeing it with ECHR rulings. We're seeing where you can't deport people because of chicken nuggets and a child-like... all these issues here is concerning people. I think there's more a moment here of Parliament to get back control of what judges are up to and give them a democratic wrapper.
Yeah, I'd like to believe that the Labour Party is serious about this, that they want to change the law to mean that somebody that's claiming to be trans, because, of course, the Labour Party don't really know what that actually means, so I'm debatable about how that's going to be interpreted under a Labour government. People from racial minority communities are now getting beneficial treatment because of the pre-sentencing reports. Let's go back to equality of opportunity. That should be a concept that across the political divide we can all agree on. Unfortunately, in the modern 21st century, it's not. Let's see where the Labour...
Labour's against that, you know that.
Now, I'm going to stick up for David Lammy a bit here. Now, mark this moment. I actually read the Lammy report. In fact, I went to the Lammy report's launch in 2017, and there is some really good stuff in it, particularly around absent fathers and the justice outcomes for young men who grow up without a positive male role model. That was true then as it is now. We talked about this yesterday, the Lost Boys report from the Centre for Social Justice. So there is some good stuff in it. But it does say, and I quote, these pre-sentence reports assist the court in determining the most suited method of dealing with an offender, and it says, and they may be particularly important for shedding light on individuals from backgrounds unfamiliar to the judge. He then goes on to say, this is vital considering the gap between the difference in backgrounds, both in social class and ethnicity, between the magistrates, judges and many of those offenders who come before them. What that means is you should take a sentence aimed towards a black person and perhaps mitigate it because you don't understand their lived experience because you're white and middle class. That is two-tier justice.
And isn't it so disgusting to the hard-working black people in this country who come here, maybe second, third-generation immigrants, work hard, get to a good school, earn money for themselves, buy a house, marry somebody, raise their kids, the sort of British success story that anybody from any race should be able to do in this country. You know, Martin, I try and take political parties at their best. I think the difference between Liberals and Conservatives is we all agree on the issues, we just don't agree on the solutions. Everybody agrees that what was said in the report, and many reports have said, about the fact that there is discrimination in terms of the number of black people in prisons. I think there's about 13% of black people, the prison population is black, but just 3.5% of the people in this country.
That's not discrimination. Perhaps it's just poor lifestyle choices. But the notion that the judicial system is racist is a separate debate.
Well, that's what I agree, Martin. I'm saying it's not that it's racism, it's that black people are struggling because of some of the opportunities that they're given in life. Let's equal the playing fields. Let's give more economic opportunity to areas that have been let down, which is what Boris tried to do after 2019 before COVID hammered that. Let's talk about single-parent households and the issue in the black community around that issue. I agree with you there.
And the Lamy report did that. Yeah. And as I said, there are some really good parts of the Lamy report. Honestly, I've read it.
But don't introduce racial sentencing. That's the wrong way to tackle this problem.
Okay, we agree on that. Jack Barwell, thank you very much. And Chris, so spirited, beautiful. Now, we're still waiting for Donald Trump to pop up at the White House. Rest assured, the moment that happens, we'll be straight there. Too sweet to see Donald Trump delivering once again. Loads more still to come to it now, 5 o'clock, including a tradesman so fed up. This guy's an absolute hero. My kids, by the way, love this guy. He's so fed up and waiting for potholes to be repaired. He took matters into his own hands and repaired nearly 600 potholes down in Devon. He's been described as a local pothole hero. I'll tell you what, he's a nationwide treasure. More on this next. But first, here's your headlines with Mark White.
Brilliant.
Good afternoon. The main headlines from the GB News Centre. Members of a Russian-run spy ring are facing lengthy jail terms for one of the largest and most complex enemy operations to be uncovered on UK soil. Bulgarians Katrin Ivanov, Vanya Gabarov and Timur Avencha were found guilty at the Old Bailey of spying on an industrial scale, putting lives and national security at risk. Well, Commander Dominic Murphy, the head of the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command, details the threat they posed.
From everything we've discovered, the threat was quite broad, in fact. So, yes, they were gathering information. It's what you might call lifestyle surveillance against individuals here in the UK. My concern has always been, though, what was that lifestyle surveillance going to lead to? And we have seen a long history of the Russian state conducting operations here in the United Kingdom, including lethal threat operations like the investigation in Salisbury. So deeply worrying about the physical and information challenges created.
Well, Donald Trump is due to speak in the White House shortly. It follows news he's considering new sanctions and tariffs on Russia. That follows massive overnight strikes on Ukraine. President Trump said, based on the fact Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. Well, we'll bring you the president's remarks live just as soon as he starts speaking. Almost 1,700 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally in the past week. For the 7th straight day, Border Force responded to more migrant crossings. More than 50 migrants have arrived so far today, following 230 who made the crossing in 4 small boats yesterday. More than 3,700 Channel migrants have made the journey from France since the 1st of January, the biggest number of arrivals at this point in any year since the crisis began. Eurostar has confirmed that suspended services between London and Paris will resume again on Saturday. They were suspended after the discovery of an unexploded World War II bomb in the French capital. That device has now been defused. Thousands of passengers have been disrupted throughout today. Eurostar said those passengers can exchange their tickets to travel on another day. Those are the latest headlines for the moment. Remember, we'll cross live to the White House as soon as we hear from Donald Trump.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In South Yorkshire, the M1 northbound has two lanes shut for emergency repairs. They're between junction 34 at Meadowhall and 35 for Rotherham. In Manchester, the M60 is queuing clockwise after a collision at junction 19 for Middleton Road. In Staffordshire, the M6 is queuing northbound after a collision approaching junction 15 for Stoke-on-Trent. In the West Midlands, the M6 northbound is queuing after a collision between Wednesbury at junction 9 and the Wolverhampton turn-off at junction 10. And in Essex, the M11 is queuing northbound. There's a lane shut there for barrier repairs after a collision between Harlow North junction 7A and junction 8 for Bishop Stortford.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to 8 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Just a reminder, we're still waiting for Donald Trump to pop up at the White House, expected to address the nation on cryptocurrency, and perhaps he'll be drilled by journalists on those comments about slapping sanctions on Russia. We'll go directly there when that happens. Have no fear. But until then, Ireland will do everything they can, apparently, to help the UK get closer to the European Union. And the two nations are now holding an annual summit to improve their relationship. And the Irish Premier, Michael Martin, says they want to reduce barriers to the continent, as when Britain's economy does well, so does Ireland's. But could there be further motive behind these comments? Could there actually be a plan for a united Ireland, or a plot to take the United Kingdom back into the European Union, to reverse Brexit, starting with the Emerald Isle? Well, we can now speak with Kevin Marr, who's the author of A United Ireland, Why Unification is Inevitable and How It Will Come. Kevin, let's start with the Brexit angle. It's Friday. Let's have a bit of Brexit. I've always maintained, Michel Barnier said it himself, Ireland was a useful backdoor, a useful weapon into locking the UK via that border, forcing all sorts of issues, and it came to pass. The Windsor Agreement tied us in. We may see Donald Trump's tariffs now applied to Northern Ireland, proving we're still within the regulatory framework of Brussels, and it seems that Ireland would like that to apply across the whole of the island. And is this a cunning scheme to get us back into the EU?
I think the idea of Britain going back into the EU is the proverbial dead duck. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because there's no appetite at all in this government or in Parliament, I think, to try and revisit any of that. And to try and do it surreptitiously is just as bad an idea as to try and do it overtly. So I don't think that's happening. I think what is happening here is that Ireland is the UK's, I think, 6th largest export market. So it matters our relations bilaterally between the UK and Ireland. And of course, the Ireland is a core member of the European Union as well. And the European Union, even after Brexit, remains our largest export market. So it matters, again, that we've got a good, strong, cordial, business-like relationship, both with our nearest neighbour across the Irish Sea and, of course, with the European Union more generally. And I think that's pretty much the level of what this week was about. It's not about anything more than that. And I think it's easy to read into this that there may be a desire by the British government to try and cozy up to the EU, and is that a prelude to us going back in? I think really this is what it is. It's just a case of saying this is and remains our biggest export market, and we've got to make it really work for us. And if the government's about driving growth, which is its #1 economic priority, then it makes sense to try and maximise the value of our relationship with the European Union, and also to try and reset it, as Keir Starmer keeps saying as well, to say, let's try and move on from the kind of the Brexit wars and all the headaches and all the saga and all the rest of it. Let's try and get back to basics. Selling stuff
Kevin, I really admire your optimism. I really do, but I want to give a bit of dose of realism here, and it's this. If the UK wants to get closer to Dublin, then it has to get closer to Brussels. And Keir Starmer wants that. He wants it on defence. He wants it on all sorts of deals. It spends more time in Brussels than it does in Birmingham. And so the notion that getting close to Ireland doesn't mean getting close to Brussels, I think, is naive. And we all know that trade deals, death by 1,000 paper cuts might be the route back in. It won't be a new referendum. No one's mad enough to do that. But it might be death by 1,000 paper cuts, starting in Dublin.
I think Keir Starmer is completely set on a relationship with the EU that's outside, where the UK remains outside the European Union. I think he recognises if at some stage down the line future governments decide actually we're going to change that and recommend going back in, it's not going to be under him. It's not going to be under his government at all. So he's here with his kind of mop and bucket, trying to clean up some of the mess left behind by the previous government and try and put things on an even keel, so that we get into the business of saying, look, where there is sensible cooperation, and of course we're seeing with a pace of global events that things people couldn't have foreseen 12 months ago, even with the direction of travel of the Trump administration and the ongoing problems with Russia and Ukraine, that sensible levels of cooperation with our European allies make sense. And I think that's the tenor of where Starmer is. Where it makes sense, let's do business and let's cooperate. But this isn't a cozying up exercise, a warming up exercise to take us back into the EU. As I say, that issue is a dead duck, certainly in this Parliament and for this government.
Kevin Moore, you said that as if you almost believed it. Thank you very much. I know you do believe it. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying I've just always had my magnifying glass hovered over anything like this, because I always sniff a rat. Call me a grizzled cynic. Kevin Moore, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much, my friend. Have a great weekend. Now, for search the winter sun this year, and who can blame you, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're wondering if there's any scope for winter sun in the Mediterranean at the moment, well, Greece is your best bet. Mostly fine here, but absolutely horrendous weather across Iberia, Madeira, into the Canary Islands. Of course, we had the flash flooding a day or two ago in Gran Canaria. We've also got the risk of river flooding and flash flooding across Spain, Portugal, into the Balearics. Meanwhile, most of Italy fine away from the far south, and Greece largely fine for the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's going to be lots of spring sunshine around for the weekend and feeling warm in that sunshine too, though a little bit wet at times across parts of Scotland. That's all thanks to low pressure towards Scandinavia, dragging in a frontal system through into the overnight period, so some thicker areas of cloud here and also some outbreaks of rain. Those will continue to push their way northwards through the overnight period, so quite wet at times across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and leading to a very wet start across northern parts of Scotland in particular by the time we reach Saturday morning. For many areas staying largely dry and some clearer spells, but we find ourselves in between two frontal systems, so temperatures aren't going to dip away, and it's actually going to be quite a mild night for many, particularly across towns and cities, many remaining in the mid to high single figures. So a wet start, yes, across parts of Scotland, but any outbreaks of rain are still going to slowly shift their way northwards and will eventually clear and peter out through the course of the morning. Quite cloudy and murky at times across Northern Ireland, could even see some patchy fog at times across Northern England, and pretty much elsewhere across England and Wales too, a chance of some patchy fog. Thicker cloud just moving into parts of Cornwall, perhaps later on into Devon, a risk of showers here. But through the course of the day, any rain or showers largely easing away. They just might leave a remnants of cloud at times, but for many, for the beginning of the weekend, there's going to be lots of dry weather, lots of blue skies around, and temperatures still feeling very warm for the time of year, so definitely feeling pleasant in that sunshine, particularly across northern parts of England, where we could potentially reach around 18 or 19 degrees Celsius, and with light winds, that should feel very pleasant for the time of year. Then through into the evening, we'll see a mix of cloud and some clearer spells. So under the clearest skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. But for most, once again, it should remain largely mild. And into next week, there will be some dry weather, still some showers at times, but temperatures soon dipping away. So turning much colder overnight and also by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Still waiting for Donald Trump. Any moment he's going to pop up and we'll put you straight through to the White House. But before that, an equally magnificent story. A tradesman so fed up of waiting for potholes to be repaired in his area has taken matters into his own hands. Look at it. It's marvellous. And he's fixed nearly 600 potholes, claiming to have saved the taxpayer more than £100,000 in the process. Now, the magnificent scaffolder Dermot McGough said he has repaired 570 road cavities in North Devon over the last 4 years, doing this voluntarily and free of charge. Well, let's speak with that man now. It's Dermot McGough. Not all heroes wear capes, but they do wear high-vis vests. Dermot, what a magnificent story. You're saving the taxpayer a bundle of cash. You're saving motorists getting their fillings rattled out. Tell us, what began your amazing hobby?
I got to say, what began my amazing hobby is having a leaf spring snap on one of my trucks.
Right.
I got totally despondent with it. Obviously, I'm a Devon County councillor, and I represent the areas of Northern, West Wales, and Apador. And basically you just got a bit hands-on approach, a pragmatic approach to it. I got totally fed up with reporting it to the highways and nothing being done because it doesn't meet the criteria. Now, I share the same frustrations as many members of the public. You pay heavy council tax and you don't get good services for it. So if you don't do it yourself, who's going to do it?
And Dermot, you initially started cleaning road signs, I understand, because they were so filthy. And again, but the council told you off. They said you weren't allowed to do it and they would fine you if you did. So you learned how to do it yourself. You took the course and you cracked on. Now, you do all this out of your own pocket. How much money have you spent doing this, mate?
Well, originally, when I first got in, Martin, I spent £15,000 of my own money the first 2 years buying like the hot tarmac. But then I become a member of the road warden scheme on Devon County Council. So Devon County Council, then they give you tubs of tarmac through to a local parish council.
So you get the tarmac turned up. You can see it there on the screen. You mix it up. You've got a pounding machine. You're putting it in. You're filling it yourself. And I mean, you've basically saved the taxpayer a huge bundle of money. I'm assuming this has made you very, very popular. I told my kids about the story this morning. They said he sounds like a hero, Daddy.
Well, I definitely won't say I'm a hero. I'm just a despondent member of the public, and obviously, as a Devon County councillor, I'm totally fed up the back teeth with the funding we get from Devon itself. From my highways, I get £76,000 a year. That's an email from the chief executive. Now, you might as well just pee in the wind because it doesn't go anywhere. So every Friday I go out, most Fridays I go out, and I've now the Ranger team on Northern Town Council, they've come and helped me as well. So in total together, we've done over 700 potholes now. The Ranger team are fantastic. We put the equipment on. You get slated for it, but I don't care about being slated. If you don't do it yourself, have pride in your community. I got pride in my community. I actually love where I live, and I get fed up the back teeth for seeing potholes. It's not good.
Well, Dermot McGough, you're an absolute legend, mate. You're an inspiration. You're honestly, these things really, really matter to people. You take an action into your own hands. Thank you very, very much. Hero of the week, Dermot McGough, top man on the island. Thank you very, very much. Love it. Now, plenty more to come, including we're expecting to hear from US President Donald Trump any moment now amid new threats of sanctions, this time against Russia. We're also expected to hear about a potential cryptocurrency mountain being built, a stockpile built under the US government. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's News Channel. But before that, it's time for your weather. And here's Honor Critic.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's going to be lots of spring sunshine around for the weekend and feeling warm in that sunshine too, though a little bit wet at times across parts of Scotland. That's all thanks to low pressure towards Scandinavia, dragging in a frontal system through into the overnight period, so some thicker areas of cloud here and also some outbreaks of rain. Those will continue to push their way northwards through the overnight period, so quite wet at times across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and leading to a very wet start across northern parts of Scotland in particular by the time we reach Saturday morning. For many areas staying largely dry and some clearer spells, but we find ourselves in between two frontal systems, so temperatures aren't going to dip away, and it's actually going to be quite a mild night for many, particularly across towns and cities, many remaining in the mid to high single figures. So a wet start, yes, across parts of Scotland, but any outbreaks of rain are still going to slowly shift their way northwards and will eventually clear and peter out through the course of the morning. Quite cloudy and murky at times across Northern Ireland. Could even see some patchy fog at times across Northern England and pretty much elsewhere across England and Wales too, a chance of some patchy fog. Thicker cloud just moving into parts of Cornwall, perhaps later on into Devon, a risk of showers here. But through the course of the day, any rain or showers largely easing away. They just might leave a remnants of cloud at times, but for many for the beginning of the weekend, there's going to be lots of dry weather, lots of blue skies around, and temperatures still feeling very warm for the time of year, so definitely feeling pleasant in that sunshine, particularly across northern parts of England, where we could potentially reach around 18 or 19 degrees Celsius, and with light winds, that should feel very pleasant for the time of year. Then through into the evening, we'll see a mix of cloud and some clearer spells. So under the clearest skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. But for most, once again, it should should remain largely mild. And into next week, there will be some dry weather, still some showers at times, but temperatures soon dipping away, so turning much colder overnight and also by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Lancashire, the M6 southbound is partly blocked after a collision between junction 33 for the A6 and 32 for the M55. In Manchester, the M60 clockwise is partly blocked after a collision at junction 19 for Middleton Road. In Warwickshire, the M40 is slow northbound after a collision between junction 15 for the A46 and the M42 turn-off. In Essex, the M11 is queuing in both directions. There are lane closures there following a collision earlier this afternoon, and that's causing big queues now in both directions between junction 7A for Harlow North and junction 8, the turn-off for Bishop Stortford and the A120.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's very emotional. It's designed to shock. What do you want people to take away from that advert?
I think, very sadly, a lot of people don't realise the violence and death that's prevalent in the dairy industry. For a cow to produce milk, she needs to be made pregnant, and then for humans to have that milk, the calves are snatched away. So that goes on for around 5 years. The cows are made pregnant every year. Terrible diseases occur because they are producing 10 times more milk than is natural. And then they are killed. The calves that are taken away, if they're male calves, are shot. And for the female calves, just like their mums, they're going to go through the same thing.
We've got Kelly Seaton here, who appears to have a cow nudging you, Kelly, behind you. That cow looks quite content with you.
The industry has worked incredibly hard. We have an excellent resource in that we can use semen, so actually the amount of bull calves that are born is a lot less than what it used to be. We're working really hard to ensure that every calf goes down the right route. So actually shooting bull calves isn't a practice that takes place any longer.
We can be kind, we should be kind.
And I'm kind to my kids by giving them cow's milk, which is full of vitamins A, magnesium, zinc, B12, calcium, vitamin D. This is stuff that children need to grow, isn't it, Kelly? And I think what my problem is, Ben, is that your commercial is all about emotion. It's manipulating. It's not facts. You're not laying out facts about the dairy industry.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back, and let's cross now live to the Oval Office where US President Donald Trump is addressing the nation.
Year of Biden. These are also high-paying jobs. These are very prime jobs. The ISM Manufacturing Survey and the S&P Manufacturing Survey have also confirmed that our administration is presiding over a brand new domestic manufacturing boom after major collapse under Biden. It was a collapse. All he did is keep adding new government jobs, which are not the jobs you want. We're trying to shrink government and grow the private sector. That's what we've been doing. Under the final 2 years of Biden, 1 in every 4 jobs created in America was a government job. That's a tremendous percentage. But under the first full month of President Trump, which we haven't even gotten started yet, an incredible 93% of all job gains were in the private sector. So that statistic just came out. Big gains for native-born Americans. For the first time in 15 months, the job gains for native-born Americans, for American people born in America, exceeded job gains for migrant and foreign-born workers. This is the first time that's happened in more than 15 months. Employment for native-born workers went up by 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. Now, you've heard the same stat where foreign workers were taking up all the jobs or almost all the jobs. In some cases, literally all of the jobs. And now it's 284,000 native-born jobs here, people born in our country, 284,000. Well, foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. First time that's happened in a long time. So these are incredible numbers, and they're very early. I mean, we're here for 5 weeks, but we have been talking about it since the big win in November 5th. So a lot of these people, they listen to us speak and they say, well, I'm going to gear up, and they're gearing up. And so they've been gearing up. They've had a little time. It's not just 5 weeks. It's 5 weeks plus a few months. And they put it into effect pretty quickly. They have confidence that what I'm saying is going to happen. So with that, I'd like to ask a highly respected gentleman, Kevin Hassett. He's been with us for a long time, and he's been right about a lot. We had the greatest economy in history in the first term, and Kevin was a big part of it. So Kevin, could you maybe give it a little description, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Trump. I think that the three things that you emphasized during the campaign is that you wanted to create domestic, high-paying manufacturing jobs, that you wanted to end wasteful government spending and reduce the unproductive government workers, and in fact unleash them into the private economy where they could be more productive, and to create jobs for Americans. A lot of people said that if you deported illegals, the employment would go down because no Americans would take those jobs. And if you look, 280,000 American-born folks were hired, manufacturing jobs are going up, and this is just out of the expectation of your future policies, really, sir. It's in April when your Reciprocal Trade Act is expected to happen. The tax cuts haven't passed yet. And so people are clearly expecting the golden age. And if you want to forecast the future numbers, everybody, just keep in mind that President Trump has already gotten us $1.7 trillion in commitments of new factories. And those haven't even happened yet. Those aren't even in the numbers. And so I expect this is going to be a glimpse of a golden age to come, sir.
Thank you very much. One other thing, Canada, we find that they're charging us over 200% for dairy products. You know about that. And when I left, we had that well taken care of, but under Biden, they just kept raising it. Very difficult to deal with, the Canadian representatives. 250% for dairy products, tariff. So where do you hear that? You don't hear that. They have a tremendously high tariff. Give you the exact numbers in a little while coming out, on lumber. So they sell us lumber. They have a tremendous tariff. They make it impossible for us to sell lumber or dairy products into Canada, but our numbers are a tiny fraction of that, almost non-existent. And what we're doing is freeing up our forests from the environmental nonsense that they put on them, where you can't cut down a tree. And we have to cut down trees in order to build the firewalls. And those trees are sold, but we're freeing it up on an emergency basis because Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%, nobody ever talks about that. 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers, so that's not gonna happen anymore. They'll be met with the exact same tariff unless they drop it, and that's what reciprocal means. And we may do it as early as today, or we'll wait till Monday or Tuesday. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to charge the same thing. It's not fair. Never has been fair. And they've treated our farmers badly. Look, our country's been ripped off by everybody. That stops now. I had it stopped in my first term, and we're going to really stop it now because this has been very unfair. Our country, from an economic standpoint, and financial standpoint, and a trade standpoint, has been absolutely ripped off by almost every country in the world. Canada, Mexico, and then you just go right down the line. India charges us massive tariffs, massive. You can't even sell anything into India. It's almost restrictive. It is restrictive. We do very little business inside. They've agreed, by the way, they want to cut their tariffs way down now because somebody's finally exposing them for what they've done. And same thing with China, same thing with a lot of other countries. And the EU has been a terrible abuser of this country. I mean, the EU was formulated in order to take advantage of the United States, and they have taken it, but they're taken advantage when I'm in charge. So sometimes you'll hear some negative things. It's always from outside countries. America will be very strong. And, you know, if I'm a foreign country, they're going to do fine. But they can't do like they used to do, because we're going to bring back our business into this country. We need it from a job standpoint. We need it from even just a psychological standpoint. Think of it, 90,000 factories are gone since the beginning of NAFTA. So we're not going to have that, and we're going to see them build it back. Now we've already had 5 major automobile companies. First time you've heard this in a long time, since my first term actually, where we were really rocking and rolling, and then Biden came in and he stopped everything. Like such a stupid thing to do, not even a believable thing. But we have many auto plants now coming in. We have big chip plants. We have the biggest chip company in the world, most powerful, probably one of the most powerful companies in the world. Wouldn't you say, Kevin? And he's coming in and they're building one of the largest chip plants in the world. That'll be done in Arizona, mostly in Arizona. And that'll give us a big percentage. That one plant will give us a big percentage of the chip market, something we have very little of. You know, we used to have Intel, and Intel was run by a man named Andy Grove. And Andy Grove was a tough, smart guy. I used to read about him when I was a young man, and he did an incredible job. He really dominated the chip business. And then he died, and I guess they had a series of people that didn't know what the hell they were doing, and we gradually lost the chip business, and now it's almost exclusively in Taiwan. They stole it from us. They took it from us, and I don't blame them. I give them credit. I blame the people that were sitting in this seat because they allowed it to happen. We could have protected that so easily, but so we had the chip business, and now it's all in Taiwan, almost exclusive, a little bit in South Korea, but mostly in Taiwan. And it's very important. Everything you do, everything you touch is now about chips. The brake of a car, cars have chips all over the place. I was reading an article the other day where they talk about the brakes of a car are loaded up with chips. Who would think that a brake has a chip in it? But it's all about chips. So that was a big thing. And they'll be investing hundreds of billions of dollars in this country, and we'll be taking back a big, big portion of that industry. We have others coming in too. But a lot of car manufacturers are coming in, and they're coming in fast. And one of the reasons you see these numbers, and again, Kevin said it, and I said it a little bit, but the fact that they know I won the election, so after I was president-elect, they assumed that I was going to do what I said, because I do what I say. And so these numbers really reflect a lot of things that took place since November 5th, right? So, Kevin, thank you very much. Great job. Any questions?
Mr. President, how concerned are you that the large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market? How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh. No, I think the labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had many, too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and they just hire more and more people. You look at Department of Education, it seems like so many buildings I ride by, it says Department of Education. They're all over the place. And we don't even want it. We want the education to be given by the states. It'll be much better. It'll move us to the top of the list from the bottom of the list, and actually save us money. But it's too important to even talk about them. It'll save us a lot of money, but we don't want that. We want education to be given. So you go to Iowa and Indiana and Idaho and all these places that are so well run. They're going to be producing education that will be the equivalent of, like Denmark is one, and Norway, Sweden. Actually, China is one of the better in terms of education, and so we can't blame size anymore. You know, China has 1.4 billion people, but they're very high on their list. The one thing we're doing well on, we're number one on the list, is cost per pupil. We spend more money than any other country in the world by far. So I jokingly say the one thing we do well on is the cost. We spend more money, and yet we're toward the bottom of the list. Yeah.
Mr. President, I want to ask you, the joint address, millions of Americans watched your joint address earlier this week, where you warned that there could be a little disturbance that Americans could feel as a function of these taxes, these tariffs. How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve because it was unfair, although I'm sure they'll take advantage of it. I see they're driving a lot of cars into the U.S. to try and avoid the tariffs, and they're taking advantage of it a little bit. But they called me, they asked me, they said, could they have a little bit of help? And I decided, they're American companies, USMCA, and I let them have that. But this really kicks in, the reciprocals, kicks in on, let's see, I guess the 2nd. And I wanted it to be the 1st so badly, it just didn't want to be on April Fool's Day. So I made it the 2nd. That's going to cost a lot of money. That one day is going to cost a lot of money, but that's okay. But I don't see it. I don't see anything. I see good reports. I think we're going to have good numbers from the beginning. Now, globalists won't love this because this brings jobs back to America. So if they're coming back to America, maybe you'll lose some in other parts of the world. But the other parts of the world have done very well, and they'll continue to do very well. But I think the United States is going to be doing record business. We'll bring a lot of those 90,000 factories that have been lost over the last number of years. It's been, it's hard to believe. 90,000, think of what 90,000 is. 90,000 plants and factories are gone. We're going to bring back many of those plants and factories.
One day the tariffs are on, the next day they're off. Right now the markets, as you know well, prefer stability. Are you done going forward with the pauses and the carve-outs? Is that it for those?
There'll always be changes and adjustments, and you can't just, I could have, for instance, told the American car companies, no, I'm not going to give you anything, and then you wouldn't have had to say, well, they're getting a little extra. It's just a little bit of a 1-month reprieve. They're very happy about what's happening. They won't have to go across borders, and you see the zigzag, and you have a fender made in Canada, you have something else made in Mexico. We don't want that. We want it made here. But there'll always be some modifications. I mean, if you have a wall in front of you, sometimes you have to go around the wall instead of through it. But I think very little. I think very little. On occasion, if we can do something, we want to help companies. We want to help companies create jobs. So I could have left that, and you wouldn't have had a minor change. Instead, I was asked by the real majors, the big majors, if they could do this, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. I want you to produce a lot of jobs. And numerous of the people, actually all of the people I spoke to have already been, they're very much on the way to already doing it. That's why you have auto jobs increase. And the man, I don't know him, Sean Fain, I don't know him, and I did great, as you know, with the auto workers, with the Teamsters, with unions, I did fantastically well. Best numbers ever by a Republican. And I have a lot of respect for those people. But Sean Fain, who I don't know, but wasn't a supporter, although the auto workers were big supporters. I watched him last night, and he said, Donald Trump is absolutely right on tariffs. He said, what he's doing on tariffs is an incredible thing. And it's about time somebody had the guts to do it, because we're going to save auto manufacturing. And I said to people when I was campaigning, you're going to have so many auto jobs, you're not going to believe what's going to happen. We're going to load up Michigan. I won the state of Michigan, as you know. And part of the reason I won it was I got a lot of auto workers that voted for me, Detroit, etc. But I think people are going to be very surprised. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned in your remarks chips manufacturing, how a significant percentage is now in Taiwan. You also mentioned it in your address to Congress. And you called on Congress to overturn the CHIPS Act, which had bipartisan support in the last Congress. Why would you like to see this particular law overturned, Mr. President?
Because it's hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's just a waste of money. Now, some people have already taken the money and used it. Actually, it's very hard to qualify because they go by race, they go by gender, they go by all sorts of things. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. You won't be able to find those people. So I don't even think anybody can qualify. They have so many different categories in order to qualify. You have to have so many of a certain race, a certain gender, a certain this, a certain, and I don't think they can qualify, but if they take the money, they better qualify because they'll be watching them. But it's a tremendous waste of money. I didn't give the greatest chip company in the world, one of the greatest companies. I didn't give them 10 cents. They came here because of tariffs, because they didn't want to pay the tariffs. And they also came here because they like the results of the election, because they know that I'm very pro-business and pro-jobs. I mean, I'm pro-business, not for business sake. I'm pro-business because of jobs, because business is producing the jobs. Okay?
Considering on Russia, if I may, President Putin is bombing Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you still believe him when he tells you that he wants peace?
Yeah, no, I believe him. I believe him. I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and Ukraine. I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards. As you know, we're meeting in Saudi Arabia on sometime next week, early. And we're talking. I find that in terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia, which is surprising because they have all the cards. I mean, they're bombing the hell out of them right now. And I put a statement in, a very strong statement. Can't do that. You can't do that.
Mr. President,
we're trying to help them, and Ukraine has to get on the ball and get a job done. Michael, could you come up here? I see Michael back there. Good. I'm glad. He's traveling all over the world. I just saw him come in the door. Could you give a little definition of what's going on, please?
Sure. Well, the president has been crystal clear, and he's been clear to all sides. The fighting has to stop. Both sides need to get to the table. We had a good engagement. Both leaders have said only President Trump could do so, and only he has been able to do so. We had an initial engagement with the Russians. The Ukrainians had a great opportunity to bind our economies together through that mineral deal. Unfortunately, that didn't go so well, but we think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself and Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get a ceasefire in place, and drive peace home under President Trump's leadership.
I think both parties want to settle. I think if I wasn't president, this war would have had no chance of settlement, zero chance. But I think we're going to get it settled and stopped. We got to stop. They're losing on average 2,000 soldiers a week. That's a lot of soldiers. Do you agree, Peter?
It's a lot of soldiers on both sides, I agree. Do you, Mr. President, think that Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of the U.S. pause right now on intelligence and military aid to Ukraine?
No, I actually think he's doing what anybody else would do. I think he wants to get it stopped and settled, and I think he's hitting them harder than he's been hitting them. And I think probably anybody in that position would be doing that right now. He wants to get it ended, and I think Ukraine wants to get it ended, but I don't see, it's crazy. They're taking tremendous punishment. I don't quite get it, but I suspect, Michael, he probably wants to get it ended.
He does, Mr. President. The Russians are taking incredible losses on the front. As the president has said, this is a meat grinder of people, of material, of national treasure, and no one else has any solutions except to let this war continue forever. But I'll add, the president has had multiple conversations and a visit from President Macron of France, Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom. We have the NATO Secretary General coming next week. We have this meeting with the Ukrainians. We've had it with the Russians. All of this in the president's first month in his leadership. We will engage in the shuttle diplomacy, and we will continue to use his leadership and what leverage we have to get both sides of the peace table. It's not going to be easy, but President Trump...
This war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president. But it did happen, so a lot of other things shouldn't have happened, too. We shouldn't have 21 million people pouring into our country through open borders, many of whom are criminals, very bad criminals, including murderers, thousands of murderers. Many killed, far more than one person, and they're roaming our streets. But Tom Homan and Kristi Noem are doing an incredible job, and we're getting them out of here. And we'll get them out. We'll get them all out. But all these things shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have inflation. We shouldn't have had this horrible inflation where the prices have gone up. Look at eggs. So we're doing a good job. We're doing a good job.
Mr. President, in regards to the pause on military assistance to Ukraine, you put out on your social media post today that Russia is pounding Ukraine.
That's right.
Why not provide Ukraine with air defenses? And what happens, Mr. President, when Ukraine runs out of the Patriot missile batteries?
Good question. Because I have to know that they want to settle. I don't know that they want to settle. If they don't want to settle, we're out of there because we want them to settle. And I'm doing it to stop death, more important than anything else. Secondarily, way down the line is the money. So we're in for $350 billion, and Europe is in for $100 billion. They should be in for the same or more than us. And, you know, I watched over the last week or so what's going on in Europe. This thing could end up in World War III if we don't get it settled. This could really end up in a World War III. We got to get it settled.
So on Iran, how confident are you that the Iranians will negotiate with you? And is Israel on board with this outrage?
Yeah, I saw the hostages the other day. They came in, people that were not young and some older, much older. And they gave, it was hard for them to do it actually. They gave statements as to what happened. I was asking, what happened? How was it? I said, did you see anybody in there that was kind, like out of the hundreds of people that you were seeing, Hamas? Did some of them wink at you and say, don't worry, you're going to be okay, or give you a piece of bread, or no? I said, were there any people that were like kind? I was shocked. The answer was nobody. There was nobody. Just the opposite. They'd be slapped and punched. One man broke his ribs. He couldn't breathe for a month. It was brutal. I was so surprised. Could you think there'd be a couple of people that would be kind, that would say, you're going to be okay, but they had none of that. It's pretty amazing. Brian?
Thank you, President.
He's a kind person.
Well, according to the
although not to Zelensky, he wasn't.
Well, you know what, that's another
but to Trump, he's been good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Nice tie, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I like yours too.
Two questions. One on peace. Why don't you think any other European countries are offering a peace deal? It seems like no one's come to the table for peace except for you.
Yeah. It's a very good question. Sometimes questions aren't answerable. They're in a very unusual position. They don't know how to end the war. I think I do know how to end the war. Despite the Russia hoax, I've always had a good relationship with Putin. And, you know, he wants to end the war. He wants to end it. And I think he's going to be more generous than he has to be. And that's pretty good. That means a lot of good things. Because frankly, you could have made a great deal if this war never started, you could have made a great deal. I don't know that anything would have had to be given up. This was not a war that was going to start, Brian. And it didn't start. For 4 years, you know, somebody said, well, how do we know that? Well, for 4 years, it didn't start. I used to speak to Vladimir about it. I used to speak to him about it at length. It was the apple of his eye, but there was no way he was going in. And he knew, you know, there were going to be consequences. But it did start. I mean, think of what happened. Inflation, you have the war with Ukraine and Russia, that wouldn't have happened. October 7th would have never happened. Israel, they had no money. Iran had no money. Iran was stone cold broke, and now they have a lot of money. And that's going to be the next thing you'll be talking about is Iran. What's going to happen with Iran? And there'll be some interesting days ahead. That's all I can tell you. You know, we're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. Can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I think that I would have had a deal within 1 month after the rigged election of 2020. They were all set to make a deal. And then when I lost, they saw this person who's a stupid person, very stupid person. And they said, let's not make a deal. And they were right. He took the sanctions off. They became rich under Biden. They went from having no money to having $300 billion. All in a short period. It's oil. Oil builds up fast. It's a nice living if you have a nice oil well. And they do. They have a lot of nice oil wells, right? So anyway, it's going to be a big thing. It's an interesting time in the history of the world. But we have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon. Very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
Mr. President, your allies are calling on you to pardon Derek Chauvin. Are you considering pardoning Derek Chauvin?
No, I haven't even heard about it. No.
Mr. President, on peace.
I haven't heard that.
In the first term, you may recall, I broke the news that you were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And the reason for that was the work that you led on the Abraham Accords. I spoke yesterday with the member of parliament, the Norwegian parliament, that nominated you. And he said what the Nobel Committee is looking for from you, Mr. President, is security guarantees for Ukraine. Is that a possibility, Mr. President?
So, before I even think about that, I want to settle the war, get it finished. Because if I'm not here, nobody's going to settle it. And President Macron has said that, and everybody said that. The prime ministers and presidents. We're pushing very hard. That's all I'm thinking about now. As far as the question about security later, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting it settled. We got to get them. We're losing 2,000 human beings every week. More than that, actually. 2,000 nice, young, although they're getting older because they're drafting much older now. In the case of one country, much older, because a lot of the young people have been killed. It's very sad, and I'd like to see if I could stop that. And I'd like to also see if we could stop making these massive payments from the United States. I mean, Biden gave away money like it was water, with no anything, got nothing for it. Europe did it in the form of a loan. They get their money back, we don't. So that's how we came up with the rare earth deal. But we started, you know, behind the 8 ball. He could have gone to Europe. He could have said, come on, you got to put up money with us. You got to put up money with us. But he never did that. They just kept handing money out because he was grossly incompetent. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay, that was Donald Trump there speaking from the Oval Office at the White House. Started off talking about jobs. The jobs report came out in America. 150,000 jobs added in the month of February. Not as high as he expected, 170,000, but unemployment has remained unchanged at 4.1%. He then talked about tariffs. He talks about how countries been absolutely ripped off by almost every country in the entire world. Canada, Mexico, India. The tariffs are massive from and near. It's practically impossible to do business with the country, he said. He then turned his sights on his beloved European Union. He said the European Union has been a terrible abuser of the United States of America. The European Union was formulated to take advantage of the United States of America, and that's exactly what it's done, he said. He then said we've had 5 automotive plants come in, and he then started saying the next big thing will be with Iran. We cannot allow them to build up nuclear weapons. I would have done a deal with them before the rigged election and had this thing done in a month, he said, whereas Joe Biden, who he once again called stupid, he said went from having no money to having $300 million. Something's going to happen very soon, he said. I'd rather we have a peace deal with Iran, but if it's the other way, then that will get things done quickly. Wow. Well, some reaction now. We can speak with GBNews political editor Chris Hope. And also I'm joined by the Labour activist Chris Worrell. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Chris, let's start with you. The interesting thing about Donald Trump press conferences is that they start generally quite dull when he's reading off of a script, and then he starts riffing, and then the questions start, and then anything can happen. That's precisely what just happened again.
That's right. We heard him there from the live from the Oval Office. I think a week to the day, looking at the time actually, from when we heard him in there with Volodymyr Zelensky. Again, the same kind of language. He's saying there that if we that we could end up with World War III if we don't get this settled. That's exactly what he told to Zelensky a week ago. He talked about how he's talked to Putin in the past. Ukraine was the apple of his eye, he said. That the invasion of Ukraine happened because he wasn't in office and he understood Putin and was able to take him on. Also talked about the issue of the Europe giving loans to the Ukraine. Now, that isn't quite true. It was disputed, I think, in the Oval Office by Keir Starmer from memory. I think we do grants and loans, and it's not. His point is we need to get something back for our $350 billion that we've invested in keeping helping Ukraine's war effort.
OK, now then, we have to move on. We have a dramatic breaking news story, and it's this. A short while ago, Reform UK has announced that an investigation has been launched into the Member of Parliament for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, after he was accused of bullying 2 female employees, one in his parliamentary office and the other in his constituency office. Well, Reform UK Chairman Zia Youssef and UK Chief Whip Lee Anderson have released this joint statement, which I'll read out to you now. It says, "It is with regrets that we feel obligated to disclose that the party received complaints from 2 female employees about serious bullying in the offices of the Member of Parliament for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe." They went on to say, in addition to these allegations of a disturbing pattern of behaviour, that Mr Lowe has on at least 2 occasions made threats of physical violence against our party chairman. And accordingly, this matter is with the police. An internal investigation is underway, which they say Mr Lowe is yet to cooperate with. Well, let's now get some reaction in the studio to this astonishing news. And I'm joined still by GBNews political editor Chris Hope and the Labour activist Chris Worrell. Chris, it's worth pointing out that Rupert Lowe was due to come on the show today at 4 o'clock, and he pulled out a short while beforehand. He said to me it was a party issue. Tell us more. You've been speaking. You have some more information on this for us.
That's right. So Rupert Lowe was going to talk to you about your immigration information. Correct. Now, yesterday, he was in some trouble in the party because he described the party's leader as acting like a, quote, messiah, saying he needed to delegate. He said that we've had to change from being a protest party led by the Messiah, that's Farage, into a properly structured party with a front bench, which we don't have. If we don't start behaving as if we're leading and not merely protesting. And so he went on, we need to professionalise, is what he was saying. He also spoke to Harry Cole on a rival station, saying that Farage was a good thing and he has a good personal following. Now, since then, it has exploded into civil war in this party. There are 5 MPs. One of them is Rupert Lowe. Lee Anderson is the party's chief whip. A friend of Anderson has told me that he is speaking with Rupert Lowe later on the future of this whip. You can't imagine him hang on to the whip, given the gravity of those allegations. Police complaints, 2 complaints made by, I think, threats to Zia Youssef, the chairman. We're trying to find out where those threats have gone, which forces received them. We don't know yet. A friend of Rupert Lowe has told me he disputes the claims. He just says these claims aren't the case. They're being cooked up, and we're going to see a comment later. It's getting very, very interesting and very difficult for Reform UK. They're ahead in the polls. They're being tested, I think, with pressure from all the main parties, particularly over the issue of Trump and Zelensky, and it's now erupting into civil war at the end of this week.
And it's worthwhile pointing out, of course, that Rupert Lowe at this point has denied all of these allegations. Of course, we're yet to hear from him officially. Chris Worrell, let's bring you in now for some immediate reaction. An astonishing turnaround of events. Yesterday, Mr Lowe was very outspoken about the leader, Nigel Farage, and now this has just landed.
Yeah, well, it looks like there's some of these Reform UK meetings are sort of turning into UFC undercards. At the end of the day, what we're seeing from Labour, his position on this is it would have been great for Rupert Lowe to have, if you go for the king, better not miss. But it looks like he's missed horrendously, and if this is a stitch-up or, that's bad. But then if these allegations are serious, then it needs to be dealt with accordingly at the end of the day.
And I guess that's the point, is it not, Chris? There's a duty bound now. It's reported to the police. Yeah. This has to be investigated. And what's the typical parliamentary procedure in such circumstances? Is it customary at this point for the member to be suspended pending an investigation? Is it customary for the whip to be withdrawn, or is that on a case-by-case basis?
Normally, these complaints, from 2 female employees, according to the Reform UK statement, which is disputed by Rupert Lowe, don't forget, serious bullying in the offices of his as MP for Greater Yarmouth. One worked in Westminster, one worked in his constituency office. These are normally dealt with by parliamentary authorities, and in fact the complaints have gone into them. They're saying there's evidence of workplace bullying, targeting of female staff, the duty of care they take as a party, and they've appointed a KC, a King's Council, to review this and look at the veracity of the complaints. Mr Lowe is not yet cooperating. Disturbing patterns of behaviour, and so it goes on. And also this threats made against the party chairman, Zia Youssef. He's the main funder of this party, and these matters are with the police. Now, this has completely exploded from where we thought that Rupert Lowe had given some, freelance remarks about Nigel Farage. Farage himself is a big political beast. He is the leader. It's a party finding its feet, and you'd have thought that given the small number of MPs on this party, they could try and bring Rupert Lowe back in. Instead, he's been completely pushed out and isolated, and it's hard to see how his future remains within this party.
And of course, just to repeat, Mr Lowe has denied these allegations. Now, the police investigation will commence, and I guess the parliamentary standards could be a part of this. Now I get some more reaction now. I'm joined by the Labour activist Aisha Ali Khan. Aisha, welcome to the show. A story just breaking, of course, and just to point out once again, Mr Lowe denying these allegations, but of course very serious in their nature and as such duty bound to be an investigation.
Absolutely, gosh. We knew something was bubbling away. There's been a lot of sort of back to and froing between Rupert Lowe and obviously the leadership and Nigel Farage and other reform supporters as well. And this always happens, honestly. They get to a certain stage. And obviously this was the most successful election result for reform. But then there's so much infighting, and there's so much, so many egos involved, and there's always a rising star. In this case, it's Rupert Lowe, and the incumbent, the king. As your guest mentioned, Nigel Farage, and he's not going anywhere, by the way. So no matter what happens, he is there to stay. And so there's always going to be these kind of massive clashes, and somebody's going to. And pretty soon, obviously, now we've got this investigation.
I have to momentarily, Aisha, I'm going to have to momentarily interrupt you there, I'm afraid, because we've just received a statement from Mr. Rupert Lowe.
Wow.
Chris Hope, you have that statement. What does it say?
Yeah, so he says he's disappointed but not surprised to read Reform's untrue and false allegations. Let me be abundantly clear, he says. This investigation is based on zero credible evidence against me, as has been stated repeatedly by the neutral investigator. He's cooperated and spoken at length with the KC, which the party, the King's Council, which the party has instructed, at great cost to the party to investigate minor staff matter. The KC, apparently, is dismayed that this statement has been made by Reform UK and reiterated that no evidence against him has been sent to her. She stated that this has been issued before the investigation has even started. She, the KC, again, we don't know who the KC is shocked at the process, shocked at the communication from the party, and shocked that no credible evidence has been given despite her repeated requests. He says he was sent a letter initially on Friday afternoon last week with no evidence provided and no prior warning and no attempt to fully understand the position. Allegations of physical threats are outrageous and entirely untrue, Rupert Lowe says. He has never made any derogatory comments about women or those with disabilities. That's a lie. These allegations are not even referring to him. He's seeking legal advice immediately. Again, there's no credible evidence against him. It's a long statement. I'll carry on. It's no surprise, he says, that this vexatious statement has been made, issued the day after his reasonable and constructive questions of Nigel and the reform structure. It was issued on Twitter, on X, late on Friday, today, with no prior warning. He certainly was surprised, Martin, when I spoke to him earlier. All I stated was that communication needs to improve, delegation needs to improve, structure needs to improve. These are all reasonable requests of a party looking to form the next government. They are ahead in the polls. That is possible. He stands by everything he said to a newspaper and elsewhere yesterday. He's been pushing for behind the scene for many months with zero success for reform. He's been frozen out of meetings, policy discussions, press conferences and more, and his repeated requests for better communication and regular meetings have been mocked and ignored. Honestly, he says he's tried and will continue to try. He didn't speak publicly without exhausting all other options repeatedly. He's done everything in his power to resolve this behind closed doors. Sadly, he failed.
Do you want me to take over for a moment there, Chris?
Give you
a breather. Let me carry on. The statement continues thus. Our voters, our members and our country all deserve so much better than this. To reform supporters of mine, please stay with the party. We must win the next election. There is no other choice. Infighting serves nobody but our enemies. This could have all been resolved with even the most basic level of communication. I do not believe that Reform members will be pleased to know that their membership fees are being spent on instructing expensive lawyers to investigate their own MPs over matters that are entirely baseless and have been dealt with in the correct parliamentary procedure with HR's full involvement and support. The staff member in question only raised a vexatious complaint once disciplinary proceedings had been initiated against them for serious wrongdoing. The other individual mentioned dropped her appeal. If they want to kick me out over false claims, I have to finally present some credible evidence against me. There is none, as the KC has just told me. Again, a complete inability to accept even the most mild constructive criticism without such a malicious reaction is not effective leadership. This is our party's as much as it is Nigel's. Chris Hope, an astonishing statement there, a total rebuttal from Rupert Lowe, and a complete rebuttal. He denies everything. He says it's vexatious and it's timed entirely uncoincidentally after his outburst yesterday in the Daily Mail. Let's go back now to the Labour activist Aisha Ali Khan. Aisha, thank you for bearing with us, but as you understand, I'm sure we had to read out that statement from Rupert Lowe, and he's entirely denying all of the allegations. He's saying they're vexatious and they're politically timed to try and damage him.
Absolutely. Well, look, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We don't know what the truth is. But I have been involved in investigations, parliamentary investigations, complaints that have been made by serving staff of MPs. And I can tell you one thing, it's a very long, slow, arduous process. This could drag on for years, coupled with the fact that now there have been allegations, complaints made to the police, so that if there is a criminal investigation, that could take a while. So, and once everything is concluded, I have a feeling we're going to see some libel action as well involved. So this is turning into quite a long, drawn-out saga, and this could easily impact the next election. And in Reform, I mean, they were unstoppable. Look at the seats, look at the supporters, look at, you know, the ongoing, you know, Rupert Lowe and all these other rising stars, and the attention they were getting, not just in the UK, but across the pond in America as well. All that is going to come crashing down if this saga continues. And I feel it's a bit too late, Martin, for a possibility of a kiss and make up right now. There's quite a lot of damaging things out there, not just obviously the statement right now, which is long, and I still have to look at it and read it and process it separately myself. But there's a lot of ill feeling there, and a lot of anger and hurt. And what Rupert has said is that he's tried to reach out and he's tried to resolve this, and it's all false and so on. So he is feeling like the injured party, like the victim here. And his supporters are going to see this. And we could be seeing a split coming up right now. We could be seeing Reform supporters actually taking sides, even though he has said, please don't take sides against the party, stick with the party. But people are going to be aggrieved, especially his supporters. And also, this is going to turn off normal supporters. They're going to think we do not want to vote for a party or support a party that is actually acting childish or the serious allegations. So we're going to see, this is going to turn into quite a disaster, really, for the party.
Well, let's see how things develop. Aisha Ali Khan, thank you very much for joining us. And I believe, Chris Hope, you just said there's a statement been released by the Conservative Party on this.
So the Tory Party, of course, is, I'm sure, quite pleased about this chaos in the Reform UK Party. They say if these allegations are true, again, a big if, given what Rupert Lowe says, and as serious as they claim, then Reform would remove the whip from Rupert Lowe. That hasn't happened yet. We know Lee Anderson, the Chief Whip, is meeting with Lowe later today. If they're not removing the whip, and then it can only be seen as a stitch-up to ruin Lowe's reputation and punish him for criticising their messiah. Now, I've been around sort of Nigel Farage's politics for 20 years, and we have a similar rowing with UKIP. This is a disaster for the party.
OK, we'll have full reaction after a short break, and I'll still be joined by Chris Hope and Chris Worrell for full reaction to the dramatic news that there have been allegations launched against Rupert Lowe, which he denies strongly. More on that next. But if you're in Sturridge winter sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
If you're wondering if there's any scope for winter sun in the Mediterranean at the moment, well, Greece is your best bet. Mostly fine here, but absolutely horrendous weather across Iberia, Madeira, into the Canary Islands. Of course, we had the flash flooding a day or two ago in Gran Canaria. We've also got the risk of river flooding and flash flooding across Spain, Portugal, into the Balearics. Meanwhile, most of Italy fine away from the far south, and Greece largely fine for the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's going to be lots of spring sunshine around for the weekend and feeling warm in that sunshine too, though a little bit wet at times across parts of Scotland. That's all thanks to low pressure towards Scandinavia, dragging in a frontal system through into the overnight period, so some thicker areas of cloud here and also some outbreaks of rain. Those will continue to push their way northwards through the overnight period, so quite wet at times across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and leading to a very wet start across northern parts of Scotland in particular by the time we reach Saturday morning. For many areas staying largely dry and some clearer spells, but we find ourselves in between two frontal systems, so temperatures aren't going to dip away, and it's actually going to be quite a mild night for many, particularly across towns and cities, many remaining in the mid to high single figures. So a wet start, yes, across parts of Scotland, but any outbreaks of rain are still going to slowly shift their way northwards and will eventually clear and peter out through the course of the morning. Quite cloudy and murky at times across Northern Ireland. Could even see some patchy fog at times across Northern England, and pretty much elsewhere across England and Wales too, a chance of some patchy fog. Thicker cloud just moving into parts of Cornwall, perhaps later on into Devon, a risk of showers here. But through the course of the day, any rain or showers largely easing away. They just might leave a remnants of cloud at times, but for many for the beginning of the weekend, there's going to be lots of dry weather, lots of blue skies around, and temperatures still feeling very warm for the time of year, so definitely feeling pleasant in that sunshine, particularly across northern parts of England, where we could potentially reach around 18 or 19 degrees Celsius, and with light winds, that should feel very pleasant for the time of year. Then through into the evening, we'll see a mix of cloud and some clearer spells. So under the clearest skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. But for most, once again, it should remain largely mild. And into next week, there will be some dry weather, still some showers at times, but temperatures soon dipping away. So turning much colder overnight and also by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying. That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Wow, what a day. It's 10 to 6. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. A short while ago, Reform UK has announced that an investigation has been launched into the MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, after he was accused of bullying 2 female employees, one in his parliamentary office and the other in his constituency office. Now, Mr Rupert Lowe has strenuously denied all of these accusations. And at this point, the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, has waded into too. And he said this, these allegations just on social media, he said the allegations are complete nonsense. They're designed to rubbish a good man in Rupert Lowe. Nigel Farage needs to get a grip. Ben Habib, no surprise, he is wading into this. It's an incredible breaking news story. Let's get some further reaction now with the political commentator, Dr. John Coulter. John, welcome to the show. So the party simply at civil war here. What's your take on this? Of course, Rupert Lowe denies all of these allegations.
Well, good afternoon, Martin. I think it reminds me, this unfolding story, of an old saying about Irish republicanism, that whenever a new movement is formed, the first item on the agenda is the split. And I think, as you said, you used the term civil war. I think there's a real danger here that what could unfold here is a massive split within Reform UK, leading to various factions developing, and that the anti-EU movement could fall apart. Because one of the big dangers at the present minute with Labour having such a massive majority is that there are clearly those within the Labour Party who would love to have a referendum on rejoining the European Union. And that's the danger, because at the present minute, Reform UK, because they're leading in the opinion polls, they are the buffer which stops this quasi-referendum on wanting to rejoin the UK and slap the face of those who voted leave. This is what's stopping it happening.
OK, Dr. John Coulter, we have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us for your quick reaction. Let's get back to the studio now. I'm still with Chris Worrell and Chris Hope. Chris Worrell, let's come first to you. Party at civil war. Well, seemingly nobody's winning.
I think you see Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, it's like two seagulls fighting over a soggy chip, and now it's sort of escalated into... I mean, he said he was surprised. I mean, he's gone on public media tarnishing his own leader and then wonders why, it's all come crashing down. I think Isabel Oakeshott, called him an amateur yesterday. Maybe that was a bit much, but we've got to see where Reform are at the minute, They're way behind the money raising than the Tories at the minute, like way behind. And you've also got to realise that they've not won 9 out of the 9 council elections this week, nowhere near. OK, let's have the final word, the final minute of the show to Chris Hope. This, for the party, is a disaster. It seems to be imploding before our eyes.
Yeah, Chris Worrell says no one wins. Who wins is Labour and the Tory party. This is the kind of pressure they've been putting on this party all week through Trump, Zelensky. What will Farage do? Questioning his patriotism, not raising enough money. There's an issue there in Scotland with forgetting the name of the deputy leader, forgetting the name of 2 people coming across the party from a different party. Yeah, no one's winning apart from... Well, certainly the Reform isn't winning, but I think the main parties are winning. Pressure on the party. Can Farage pull this one back?
OK, it's an incredible afternoon in politics. Rupert Lowe, dramatically, these police allegations and an investigation into him. He's totally denying all of them on the show today. Ben Habib says Nigel Farage needs to get a grip. This is a civil war at the heart of Reform. No doubt this will be continued next on Jubes & Co. with Michelle Dewberry. Astonishing thanks to both the Chris's here in the studio. You would not want to miss Michelle Dewberry's show. What a story. What a way to end the week. Here's the weather, and the storm clouds are certainly gathering for Reform.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's going to be lots of spring sunshine around for the weekend and feeling warm in that sunshine too, though a little bit wet at times across parts of Scotland. That's all thanks to low pressure towards Scandinavia, dragging in a frontal system through into the overnight period, so some thicker areas of cloud here and also some outbreaks of rain. Those will continue to push their way northwards through the overnight period, so quite wet at times across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and leading to a very wet start across northern parts of Scotland in particular by the time we reach Saturday morning. For many areas staying largely dry and some clearer spells, but we find ourselves in between 2 frontal systems, so temperatures aren't going to dip away, and it's actually going to be quite a mild night for many, particularly across towns and cities, many remaining in the mid to high single figures. So a wet start, yes, across parts of Scotland, but any outbreaks of rain are still going to slowly shift their way northwards and will eventually clear and peter out through the course of the morning. Quite cloudy and murky at times across Northern Ireland. Could even see some patchy fog at times across Northern England and pretty much elsewhere across England and Wales too. A chance of some patchy fog. Thicker cloud just moving into parts of Cornwall, perhaps later on into Devon. A risk of showers here, but through the course of the day, any rain or showers largely easing away. They just might leave a remnants of cloud at times, but for many for the beginning of the weekend, there's going to be lots of dry weather, lots of blue skies around, and temperatures still feeling very warm for the time of year, so definitely feeling pleasant in that sunshine, particularly across northern parts of England where we could potentially reach around 18 or 19 degrees Celsius, and with light winds that should feel very pleasant for the time of year. Then through into the evening, we'll see a mix of cloud and some clearer spells. So under the clearest skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. But for most, once again, it should remain largely mild. And into next week, there will be some dry weather, still some showers at times, but temperatures soon dipping away. So turning much colder overnight and also by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. As we've been hearing throughout the course of today, Eurostar trains remain suspended between London and Paris following the discovery of an unexploded wartime bomb near Paris Gare du Nord. And that also means that Eurotunnel, the shuttle services, are affected. Onto the roads, on the M62, the inside lanes closed westbound 25 to 24.